Tuesday, October 13th. Thank you for joining us for the meeting of the Board of Education. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda? John?
I would like to have a motion of the agenda with the addition of an HR addendum that was provided at our workspace to be added to item 6B on the consent agenda.
All right, is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to guest reports. Results regarding positive school culture monitoring. South High School student ambassadors are joining us this evening. Who would like to do an introduction? Dr. Gandhi?
Sure. So as part of our strategic initiative 3, which is positive school culture monitoring and the results, we provide an update to the board. Today you'll get to hear about the school culture and some activities at two of our schools here, Wellington High School and Wilson Clark. I will start by introducing the principal of South High School, Dr. Todd March, and he will introduce his team.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Gandhi and Board of Education. When Dr. Gross had shared with me that we had the opportunity to share about some culture at South High School, it was with little hesitation that a group that epitomizes what culture and character is all about here at South High School is our Bruin Ambassadors. They're a group that is extremely prideful of the school and also represents what we call class at South High School. And class is an acronym that we use for character, leadership, academics, service, and scholarship. And our students who are with us tonight will certainly give you a little overview of the ways in which they represent that class. In addition to the students who are here, I'd also like to recognize Vanessa Boehm and Adrian Eider, two of our advisors for the ambassadors. Our theme this year is to be a Bruin star. And there's no doubt in my mind that you will agree with me that our Bruin ambassadors are South High all-stars. So without further ado, I welcome our students to the podium, and they will introduce themselves, and they also have a little presentation on the screen for you. Thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Birch. So I'm Ivana Marshall. I'm a senior at Fargo South, and this is my third year being a Bruin Ambassador. Pretty much a Bruin Ambassador is a junior, senior, or sophomore student who applies to be the representative of our school and just lead the entire school in activities and a bunch of things. But some of the specific ones we do are 8th grade tours, freshman orientation, we greet people at the doors every quarter, freshman retreats, which are my favorite, personally my favorite, because we get to spend a whole day with them and we get to sing songs, play games, and just really make connections just as long as the freshmen are making connections themselves. And then Day of Compassion, which is the same thing almost as freshman retreat, but it's when our Bruin ambassadors go to the local elementary schools and we get to spend a day with them and do those same activities. And then we do new student tours and then Homecoming Hall of Fame as well. So these are just some pictures of some of the things we do. So in the top left, that's the 8th grade tours, and then we do freshman orientation, which are the 3 boys on the right, and then us greeting kids on the first day of school.
Hello, I'm Elsa Bernard, a junior and second-year Bruin Ambassador here at Fargo South. I'm here to talk about why be a Bruin Ambassador. So first we have Matt Landberg, a Bruin alumni. He says, I wanted to be an ambassador because my brothers and dad went to South and my grandma and grandpa taught for feeder schools. You could say that Bruin pride runs in my family. I have a lot of Bruin pride and I'm a strong believer in leading by example. I like helping others. I want to give a great impression of the school and make sure that students have a good high school experience by making it fun. And we have the lovely Liv here, and she says, I want to be a Bruin ambassador because I like helping people. On the first day of school, I was nervous about finding my classes, but then I saw Bruin ambassadors helping people, and I knew that I had a reason to no reason to be nervous. I will do all I can to be a positive role model and make a positive impact at our school. So like both Liv and Matt, I've always had a passion for leadership. I serve as recognition chair for Student Council and Lieutenant Governor of Division B here in Fargo for Key Club. At a school like South, where I'm surrounded by such a positive, loving community of people, it's difficult not to have Bruin pride. Growing up with ambassadors as my role models, it was the natural thing for me. As I speak to a room full of leaders in education, I encourage you to continue fostering youth leadership. Student leaders make our schools and our community a better place for everyone. They are the essence of our Bruin spirit.
Hi, I'm Alice Carlson. I'm a senior at Fargo South. This is my third year as a Bruin Ambassador, and I'm here to talk about my favorite parts of being a Bruin Ambassador. So there are many aspects of the Bruin Ambassador that I admire and am thankful to be part of such an inclusive club. One of my favorite activities that I've been involved in through Bruin Ambassadors was Day of Compassion. At each elementary school linked with South High, we have been able to spend a day teaching elementary kids to respect one another. This is extremely memorable to me because I have seen 4th and 5th graders get outside of their shell and talk to classmates that they may have never talked to before. The day always ends with a battery-powered candlelit bonfire. During this makeshift bonfire, the children are allowed the opportunity to thank someone that has made an impact in their life and apologize to those that they have been unkind to. This part of the retreat always tugs on everyone's heartstrings, but shows how mature these kids can be and how much this day has already changed them. This experience is heartwarming to be a part of, especially because it impacts the kids that are the future of Fargo South High School. Another unique attribute of Bruin Ambassadors is our bright neon yellow t-shirts that stand out while greeting classmates at the front door every quarter. And having these easily recognizable shirts has made it easier for other students to ask club members for help, whether that's a freshman needing help to their first class or new students that need help navigating Fargo South High School. Being a part of Bruin Ambassadors is always exciting because it brings out leadership qualities of every member in the club. Although it is a leadership-based club, we still get to sit back and enjoy ice cream socials every year in our club, which makes us stronger by meeting our other club members. And here's a picture. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tristan Quibell. I'm a sophomore at Fargo South, and this is my first year being a Bruin Ambassador. COVID-19 can't ruin a Bruin. Even with COVID restrictions, we were still able to have our freshman orientation where we gave freshmen their schedules, showed them around the school, and answered any questions they had. We also greeted everyone on the first day of school, all while wearing masks and social distancing.
So our future plans for Fargo South High School is we recently received a Title IV funding from our federal government. And our additional activities with our club is possibly mentoring the incoming freshmen, because I remember coming in as a freshman, I was a little nervous with the bigger school, finding my classes, meeting new students, but knowing that our club will carry on with helping those future freshmen come in and mentor them throughout homework maybe, or finding their classes, or just being there overall if they need help in any possible way. And this is an example of our club.
This concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you everyone for sharing. We do want to meet someone to lean on from time to time, don't we? Do any board members have questions? Nikki? I don't really have a question, but thank you guys. I'm very impressed.
love hearing from you. Thank you for coming.
Anyone else? All right, good luck next year, and hopefully you won't have the same situation where you'll need to wear a mask. I want to thank you for wearing those masks. I know it's protocol for you anyways, but also showing us that you can speak in front of behind a microphone and keep that mask on. So thank you very much for everything you're doing, and good luck for the rest of the year. Stay healthy. Rupak, or Dr. Gandhi, are you interested in introducing our next guests?
Sure.
Okay.
Or we will now call to the stage or the podium the principal of Lewis and Clark Elementary School, also the 2020 Fargo Public Schools Administrator of the Year, and a Vikings fan, Mr. Jason Cressup.
Welcome.
So thank you for inviting me today to talk a little bit about something that I'm very proud of that's being implemented this year at Lewis and Clark Elementary. And so early in August, obviously in a much different mindset, state of mind, my Dean of Students, Beth Olson, and myself were sitting around in my office going, what can we do to impact the climate and culture of our building this year that not only hits students, but staff and anybody that touches Lewis and Clark. And so we were going back and forth with many different ideas. And as an elementary principal, children's literature is always a great way to tie to it. There are many lessons that can be learned through literature. And so Beth said, have you ever read The Dot? And so I have a picture of it here, and there's a picture. It's written by Peter H. Reynolds. And I said, no. And so we read through that and started coming up with some ideas based on this. And The Dot it's about a girl named Vashti who discovers her artistic talent. The Dot illustrates the power of one single adult's actions to change a child's life. The book speaks to the importance of teacher-student relationships and how our connections as human beings. It shows how creative thinking on the part of a teacher can unlock a child's own creativity, confidence, and growth. And I think The Dot even goes further. There are many themes throughout this. And so we started kind of building off of that theme and thinking, how can we do this? What can we do for our students? And so we wanted to take it further. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner picture, this is a page out of the book. The student is saying, I can't. She was asked to draw a picture. The teacher is there helping her, and she's saying, I can't. Something that many of us have probably heard and said when something is challenging in front of us. And so we really wanted to focus on knowing how difficult the beginning of the year was going to be, that we didn't want I can't to be something that got in our way. And then later on in the book, that same little girl was helping another student get over her saying I can't. And so what happens in the book, I'll give you a brief summary of it, is the teacher in that top slide, when the girl says I can't, asked the student to put a dot on the piece of paper. It was an art project. And she put the dot, and then the teacher said, sign your name to it. And so then the girl signed your name, and she hung it up. And that was the artwork. And pretty soon the girl started using dots to create all different kinds of artwork. And really it ended up motivating her to really be able to express her art through the use of dots. And so later in the story, that the character there standing there said the same thing. And she did the same thing to that student, saying, put a dot on the paper, sign your name to it. And so we took that, and again, some of our themes that we have is overcoming I can't, trying to pay it forward to somebody else, and this is our theme for the year, we can and we will, and I can and I will. And so, with that being said, here's what we did. First, I had all teachers make a dot. And they posted them, and you can see them in the left-hand picture up on the wall, and they signed their names to it. Throughout the year, and currently now, we have started adding our students. Students have the opportunity to earn a dot. And when a teacher sees a student overcome a challenge, or they see a student pick somebody else up or be kind to them, that student can earn their dot. And when they do, they get, you can see the yellow border frame with a white sheet of paper, and we ask them to put their dot, and they can decorate it how they want and sign their name, and we take a picture of them and put it up there. And so we've really tried to pump it up to say each and every day on the announcements I'm talking about, hey, today's the day you can earn your dot. And so the kids have started to earn their dots. We're putting them up, plastering them all over for our students. The other thing that we wanted to do is in the middle picture and on the picture on the right, we wanted to continually recognize our staff too for overcoming and being kind to each other. And so we have these little dot cards that anytime you recognize somebody or recognize somebody doing something for you, you can recognize them back. And the middle one is a paraprofessionals locker that we have in our school that people have, everybody has access to these and can put their dots up or give dots to other people. The one on the right is a teacher's door. And so our doors and building is becoming full of these positive recognitions for our students and staff. And so that is, in essence, what we're doing this year, just kind of a recognition system to make sure that everybody feels appreciated and recognizing greatness each and every day. And so I have, if it's okay if I come up there, okay if I come up to the stage? I'm not going to sing or dance or anything. So I wanted to give each of you your dots. And so I do have a special one. And so I do have two for Dr. Gandhi, but they're filled up to me, so anytime you want to send those over to me, feel free to do so. So with that being said, that's our program that we're doing this year. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us. Any questions? All right, you deserve a dot as well, so many. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the recognition of the audience. We have a couple people that have signed up to speak tonight, so we'll have you come up to the podium. And I will read this statement. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. We would also ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee by name. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. And like I said, we have two people. Beth Lindahl is the first person, followed by Allie Ullenberger. So Beth, if you're here. And Beth had contacted me earlier saying that she wanted to speak, and I forwarded her name to Anne Marie. She also informed me that she was going to be coming into town kind of at the last minute, so maybe she hasn't been able to arrive.
I can address that. She wasn't able to make it, but she did ask if you had the opportunity to read the letter that she sent you.
Sure. Go ahead. Sure. As long as the board's okay with that, is that fine? And if you would be willing to come up then and share your name and address with us, that would be great.
All right. I am Allie Ullenberger. I live at 3518 Grandwood Drive in Fargo. And so this is the letter that Beth has sent and has asked me to read on her behalf. Hello, Dr. Gandhi and members of the school board. I am forwarding you some below information. As a child of 2 retired teachers, my request is that you open schools full-time for all of our students. I do not believe the school board is equipped to deal with the aftermath of a mental health crisis in our children. It only takes one suicide of a student or parent to destroy a family and a community. I appeal to you as a parent, aunts, uncles, grandparents. The only thing we leave behind on this earth is our legacy. Let it be said of you that we're defenders of mental health of children, not paralyzed by fear. Praying for your decisions in this difficult time. Thank you, Beth Sanford, Masters of Nursing, RN, Fargo North parent.
Thank you for that, and I didn't realize you're also our next person at the podium, so welcome
me.
again.
All right. Members of the board, thank you for giving me the time to address you today with my concerns. I ultimately would like to address concerns specifically around the hybrid model of education currently in the Fargo Public Schools Restart Plan, as well as ultimately who is making the decisions on the level of this delivery. My number one concern is the lack of consistent quality education at all grade levels in our elementary, middle, and high school schools. While I understand you as the board are not directly responsible for the role of delivering education to our children, but as the indirect oversight. However, you are responsible for approving the plan and ensuring that we have adequate learning in our classrooms. As a parent of a student in the Fargo Public Schools, my initial ask is that we remove the hybrid level of delivery from the reentry plan, as ultimately we are seeing that it is doing more harm to these students than it is good. We have the options to leave the 2 virtual academies and the in-person learning for our students. In doing research, I am referencing the CDC and their strategies on back to school. The CDC made the following statements on the importance of opening schools and providing in-class instruction. While opening schools, like any building or facility, does pose a risk for the spread of COVID, there are many reasons why opening schools in the fall for in-person instruction is important. Schools play a critical role in the well-being of our communities. They provide critical instruction and academic support, and they provide a critical role in supporting the whole child, not just the academic achievements. After looking at these facts from the CDC, I'm left with the following questions. All businesses are open without the level of restrictions that we're putting on our school system. Why? We have packed bars, restaurants, shopping centers, but yet we can't have kids in a classroom. We've had daycares open and operating this entire time. Yes, there has been a minimal incident here and there, but ultimately these kids are thriving and functioning as normal. We have camps, extracurricular activities go on without incident, but yet we're putting an insane level of operational restrictions on our schools. Have we asked ourselves what else we are exposing our kids to when we leave them out of a classroom? I'm not going to stand up here and debate COVID or mask or frankly politics. In my opinion, it should be left out of the conversation completely. I want to strictly talk about the educational needs of our children. They're not being met in this hybrid model. We've made the decisions on how to operate this school year in a COVID bubble. As leaders, we make decisions, tough decisions, every single day. We get all the information and then we make decisions. In conversations with many parents, we looked at and went over the school's back-to-school plans and we're left saying, what? This makes no sense. Our number one goal should be to educate our children, not providing a sterile bubble. We didn't look at the big picture, the decisions and the restrictions that we were putting on this operating model of our schools. We have students trying to prepare for SATs and ACTs and getting into college. We have elementary school students trying to learn how to read. We have students trying to learn while isolated in their homes. The hybrid model does not provide instruction on days off. We have students left to work on assignments that they got instruction for days prior. They're left waiting days to have their questions answered. I can't personally speak to how the virtual academy is going, but it is my understanding that there are teachers actively engaged with students throughout the day. This is not happening on the distance learning days in the hybrid model. We have kids getting piles of homework, and we also have kids getting nothing or very little at all. I can personally attest the level of educational material coming home from my first grader. His math assignment for 1 week, for 3 whole days of distance learning, was to count to 30. That's it. Just count to 30. Write down the numbers. I've asked his teacher for more, and additionally, she's been able to provide these things. But what I don't expect for her to do is to provide 2 separate curriculums and then teach me as a parent to teach my kid. According to the CDC, studies show us that students have experienced learning loss during the period of school shutdown and over summer months. In-person instruction for students has advantages over virtual learning, particularly when virtual learning was not planned for in the planned format. Schools may not have the resources or capabilities to fully transition to virtual learning. In-person classroom instruction has added benefits for many students of interpersonal interactions between the student and the teacher, and the student and their peers. Teachers are actively able to participate in student learning, provide feedback as students encounter challenges, and promote active learning among students. They go on to call out that when schools are closed to in-person instruction, disparities in educational outcomes become wider, as families may not have the capability or capacity to fully participate in distance learning. Lack of computers, internet access, et cetera, parents' availability. They go on to call out that the persistent achievement gaps that already existed prior to COVID, such as disparities across income levels and racial and ethnic groups, could worsen and cause long-term effects on children's educational outcomes, health, and economic well-being of families and communities. By making the decisions to keep our kids out of schools, we're doing more harm to them in the long term. In many conversations with Dr. Gandhi, he's brought up his concerns and his desires to get kids back in school as soon as possible. Currently, the decisions on the level of education delivery are being made by the COVID committee. I tuned in to the most recent meeting and was shocked to hear from the teacher representatives saying that they preferred the hybrid model. I was ultimately baffled by the fact that they wanted to stay in this model where they had to do double the work. I then watched parents stand up for their kids, and then I watched a union not listen to the words of health officials, and even the doctor on the committee, that it's safer for our children in the classroom. I do clearly want to make sure I call out all of our teachers, as they are essential workers. I could not love and respect our teachers more, but like every other employee right now, we have to show up to do our jobs. Teachers' jobs is to educate our children, plain and simple, and right now, that's not happening. There was a recent poll of teachers where over half shared that they wanted to stay in the hybrid model or that they want full distance learning. I frankly don't value this opinion. Our medical community has stated it is safer for our children to be in classrooms, plain and simple. Our teachers need to worry about the severe lack of education that the hybrid model provides. A recent study that was conducted by the ATA, where 1.2 billion passengers have flown on airplanes at the start of COVID, only 44 cases have been confirmed and traced back to being on that airplane. That's 1 in 27 million. And two key points that I will wrap up here is that based on that study, you sit closer on an airplane than you do in a classroom. And secondly, even if you're sitting next to somebody on a bus, you are on an airplane far longer with a 1 in 27 million chance of contracting this virus. In conclusion, my ask for the school board is to reassess this plan with the full well-being of our children in mind. Get rid of the hybrid level and have two options, full in-person learning or virtual academy. Using Jim's wonderful donut analogy from yesterday's board meeting, the school board needs to open schools full-time immediately. The COVID committee can then work to ensure the creative reentry plans for all. We need to be bending over backwards for these kids, getting them back on track and in school full-time. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Staff reports. The first report is our summer school report, Memo 49 by David Berkman and Rebecca Folden. Dr. Gandhi, do you have comments?
Sure. Every year annually, we will present to the board an update about the previous year's summer school. We will have David Berkman and Rebecca Folden present that today. This year, summer school was interesting. I think they've had to deal with more flexibility and challenges and even piloting different things as we continue to learn more about COVID and summer schools and make some last-minute decisions based on what the state was allowing us to do or not to do in summer school. So incredibly proud of our leadership team and their entire staff. They were working around the clock, not knowing if we were going to be able to offer any summer school session, one session or two sessions, and then even dealing with some of the first instances of COVID-19 cases in our district before we even had some protocols in place. So thank you to David and Rebecca, and I will hand it over to them.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi and school board members. There is a visual that might be worth looking up at on the screen behind you. And trying to have a lighthearted start to what Dr. Gandhi was talking about, depending upon which day in April or May, the plans were always shifting based upon what was allowable. And we went through multiple revisions on how to provide the best summer school experience. Some of those changes are reflected in the cover page of the summer school executive report, talking about what we had to cancel, what we moved to where, and ultimately, we all feel really good about the summer school experience that we were able to have. We'll be diving into numbers with some of the other presenters. Before I give the presentation order, just shouting out a thank you to Dr. Gandhi, Dr. Gross, and Missy. All of this change, they were at the table with us as we're brainstorming what we can and can't do. And it was truly a highly collaborative effort to come up with the best option that we could. Presenting tonight, Rebecca's up with the elementary. Following her is Jim Keel talking about the secondary program. Aaron Kaluza talking about middle school. Alice and Aaron talking about ESY. And Jennifer Free talking about the Adult Learning Center. And then Lori Nappy will conclude with the ELD, English Language Development Summer School Program, and a few pictures of the summertime success. So, passing it over to Rebecca, executive report, starting with elementary.
Thank you. I am Rebecca Fulton. I am the principal at Clara Barton Hawthorne Elementary. That's my day job. In the summer, I am the elementary summer school director. This is my, I think, 11th year doing this, and it felt like year one, just much like this year, I think. As David mentioned, I feel like every time we kind of thought we were getting close to a plan, there was a little wrench that was thrown in, and I just have to give a shout out to all the summer school people this summer, how flexible and wonderful they were. So I run two programs. The first program that I run is Enrichment Summer School. It takes place 3 weeks in June. This summer school is kind of just the fun stuff that teachers love to teach. So we had planned for everything from ukulele classes to computer classes to math, reading, language courses. We are lucky enough in this model to be able to have some high school teachers come down and teach at the elementary level and teach their passions. We had a cross-stitching course offered, just a lot of different unique things. We usually try and have these courses. We start back in November, December planning these courses. So they were ready to go. COVID hit. We really tried to figure out how we could get kids in, and we just knew we weren't quite there. So enrichment was canceled this summer. It is a paid option that families can do. So for $75, they can pick a course. The course is 2 hours long. Many of our students pick two courses. They pick an 8 to 10 course and then would pick a second course from 10 to 12. Typically, we have around 250 courses. Each summer, we pick one elementary school. We've kind of been all over Fargo. This past year, we were going to be at Hawthorne Elementary, kind of center of town. But we just knew with the hands-on and where we were in April and May, we just weren't ready to be back. So that was canceled. In July, I run Transition Summer School. And Transition Summer School is summer school that students need to be eligible to attend. There is a criteria. This is academic-based. It is funded through the state of North Dakota, so students must meet this requirement, and then I have to submit documentation to the state. There's two options. There's a math or a reading option, and there's lots and lots of ways of qualifying for this. We want to make sure we can serve as many students as possible. So they're, again, 3 weeks in July, 8 to noon. If they're doing the reading-only course, it's 4 hours. If they're doing the math-only course, it could be 4 hours. And then they do have an option of a reading-math combo. If they were to qualify for both, they can do a 2-hour math and then go right into a 2-hour reading. We have all elementary schools that are open for this. So this year, the only buildings that were closed were Lewis and Clark due to construction and Longfellow. Otherwise, every elementary school is in session. It was interesting because we were trying to figure out a way to make this work. We ended up going a hybrid. We did 3 days face-to-face, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesdays and Thursdays were distance learning days. We did not do a computerized version on the distance learning days. We knew our kids needed items in hand that they could take home, work on, have a parent there helping if needed. So every day the teachers did an amazing job of getting everything ready, getting items that students could work on at home and then bring back. And it went very, very well. Of course, numbers were a little bit less this year just because of everything we've been through. But it was wonderful, and the teachers were so happy to have the kiddos back at school. Any questions about the two programs that I run?
Any questions from members of the board? Well, thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jim Keel. I'm the assistant principal at Woodrow Wilson and Agassiz, and I want to thank the board and Dr. Gandhi for the invitation to come. My responsibility tonight is to talk about the high school portion of the summer programming. And as you've heard, lots of changes, lots of adjustments. On the fly, we were very busy trying to come up with Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. At one point, we came out with an activities plan, and within 3 days, we had to put it in the bin because it wouldn't work. So lots of changes. So what I will talk about tonight is what we typically do. Typically, we have opportunity for students to take high school courses for credit. About half of the students who typically participate are looking to retake a class. But the other half are looking at acceleration. They want to take a class so they have room on their schedule, or they're looking to graduate early, or they want extra opportunity to do other things in their lives. In terms of the course requirements, the state does require seat time. There was a state seat time requirement this summer. 67.5 hours is what we schedule. So students are allowed a little bit of time to be absent because of that 60-hour requirement from the state. The courses were built 100% distance is what we ultimately landed on. We had built opportunities on Fridays for what we called face-to-face Fridays. Unfortunately, we weren't able to access those in June or July. But we did have lots of FaceTime, so to speak, via electronics. So classes met. The majority of their time was synchronous time, which means you're logged into class, same time as your teacher. You're working with your teacher in your class. I'll direct you to the survey at the bottom of page 6. We did send some surveys out to students and also to staff. The top survey is the question that was thrown out at our students, asking them about modalities. What modality do you think works best? And it's about the combination for learning. And I think it's interesting, if you look at the ones, 17% said, I would like to have class 100% face-to-face. If you look at the number 10, we had about 11% that said, I would like to never, ever meet face-to-face with my teacher. I think the curve in the middle, the 20+% that said, I like the 50-50 split, it will work for me. So students have lots of different ideas about what mode works best for them for learning. And then the other survey, and this seems like a small number, it's about 2/3 of our academic teachers, so it doesn't include our Phi-Ed teachers. It is the academic, so the math, science, social studies, English, and health teachers. So it's about 2/3. And I think it's interesting to note that amongst our academic staff, they didn't unanimously say we wanted to have class 100% in person if we could. So I think, to me, that's an interesting revelation. Okay, on the next page, page 7, I did list all of the classes that we offered. We were able to offer quite a bit. We did have to cancel our summer academy class because it is an on-campus class. The ROTC class was canceled. We did offer driver's ed and behind the wheel, so we were able to do that. You may have heard that there was a shortage of used cars this summer. That was true. In a normal summer, we would have 3 cars that we would lease. We were able to get 1, And the three driver's ed instructors shared one car for about 6 weeks, and they drove hard and got all of our students who wanted to drive through the driving portion. So kudos to that group for making that happen. Anybody have questions about the academic portion?
I was wondering if, in regard to the high school enrollment, unless maybe it's here and I'm just missing it, how it compares the 2020 summer to the 2019 summer.
If you look on the back page,
Okay.
we do have a summary chart. That's page 17. That shows all of the individual enrollments, and it goes back a number of years. In terms of the academic enrollments, we were up. In terms of the FIAD enrollments, we were up. Marketing, we were up. Driver's ed, kind of holding steady, quite honestly. We offered as much driver's ed as we could. If you know anybody who wants to be a driver's ed teacher, have them talk to me. So we were up on most categories. I think probably two different things converged on that. One, there was a shortage of other opportunities for students this summer. I can't go to camp, my sports are canceled. I'm going to take a class in summer school. The other piece of that puzzle is the transportation. None of our students had a transportation issue this summer because they could do it from their home. And that is a barrier that we do run into with summer programming. So I think those two things helped us bump our numbers up a little bit. So good question.
Thank you for that, and I had not looked to page 17 yet, so I was still stuck on the middle school information. Does
Sure.
anyone else have questions or comments? Jennifer?
Thank you. So you mentioned, many of these were canceled, but driver's ed you were able to have that. So I see 66 students were enrolled?
Yes.
Right? So how did you decide between that and some of these other courses that weren't offered?
Okay, so we had to make a decision in May about what we could and couldn't do. And so we were able to say, yes, for sure we can do the driver's classroom portion. And we're hopeful that later this summer we'll be able to offer the driving. And the majority of the driving happened in very late July and August. So we weren't able to guarantee the driving when they started the class, but we were able to phase that in as the conditions eased, the requirements changed. And they were required to sit in the car with their masks on, encouraged to have their windows open for airflow.
Nikki?
Thank you for offering that. My daughter was one of those that took those courses. And so when we started, we weren't sure about the behind the wheel piece, but I'm grateful that they were able to do it. And I know they had one car and they worked hard and they worked day and night and even some weekends to try to pull it all off. So it was quite a deal, but thank you. Nicely done.
Yeah, thank you.
Jennifer and then Robin?
Thank you. May I ask just a follow-up? Thank you for sharing that information. So on the classroom part of that, how many kiddos then were in the classroom before the...
For the driver's ed?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty close to the number completed, 66.
But at one time, I'm sorry.
In a classroom?
Yeah.
Well, and it was virtual classroom again.
All of it was virtual?
Yep. The
Got it.
driver's ed was
That's
virtual classroom.
Okay.
Just like all the others.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Robin?
Maybe this isn't directed to the presenters, but thank you for your flexibility. It's been a tough year for planning for everybody. I would like a refresher from administration, maybe not here tonight, about how the funding from the state, particularly for the transitions, and then how the chosen summer school classes, how they're paid for. I would never put you in that position to answer that, but
There is state funding for the high school program.
I would like to see how that's connected to the fees that we charge our parents. But while you're here, help me understand the leasing part. Oh, hi, Rebecca. Sure.
I can answer a little bit of the transition fees. So it's based off attendance.
Okay.
So I have to take attendance for our kids in their face-to-face classes, and then that is submitted to the state. And we are funded based off that attendance. We're a 60-hour program, and so they base it directly off of that.
That's helpful, thank you. And so I didn't also realize, humor me about leasing cars for driver's education. I had no idea.
We work with a company in town, and we lease a vehicle for driver's ed. They install the brake pedal for us, and then we return it when we're done using it.
That makes sense, that driving instructors need a brake pedal.
That way we don't have to buy a car for 2 months of use.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I will finish with, on page 8, there is a page about the athletic camps that are traditionally offered. Due to the conditions this summer, a decision had to be made. I think I mentioned we offered it and then canceled it and then offered it and then canceled it. Ultimately, it was a cancellation. Some coaches were able to pull together small groups of students for some small camps, some mini camps in July and into August. But that was done at the coaching level, not at the summer school level. So hopefully next summer we can fill this sheet with great quality camps for our students. Thank you.
And thank you. I would share that I have a couple of students at home that also took advantage of our summer school program. They have in the past, but they did a little bit more this year. And that partly was, well, what else am I going to do? I might as well go to school. So thank you so much for what you're doing and the staff involved, all of the planning and the flexibility that was needed to help our kids get through the summer. All right.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Erin now for middle school.
Sounds good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Erin Kaluza. During the regular school year, I'm the student performance strategist at Ed Clapp Elementary. And in the summertime, I get to work with our middle school programming, and then I also support our special education programming as well. A couple of highlights from the middle school side this year. Probably my biggest highlight was the success of the teachers and their flexibility and willingness to try something completely different, even different from what they had to do in the spring. So hats off to everything that they did. A couple other highlights. We were able to increase enrollment in middle school, summer school this year. We were able to add 2 additional course offerings. Traditionally, we offer a targeted reading and a targeted math class for students who need to recoup skills, refresh skills, or maintain skills during the summer in those areas. This year we added extension type classes, so exploration reading, exploration science, and exploration social studies for students who wanted to extend their learning. That added to the boost in enrollment for middle school. Those classes were offered and open to all. The targeted reading and targeted math were courses that were suggested to students for the recoup of their skills. The summer school, middle school breakdown of enrollment is on page 9. You can see the increases there. Some next steps. The plan this summer will be to look at adding some extension reading and extension math classes for our middle schoolers. My other goal is to add in incoming 6th graders. Right now, our incoming 6th graders do have the ability to be part of our transitions elementary programming. But I would like to offer for them the extension type opportunities to get them into the middle schools just a little bit earlier, possibly set them up with more of a successful start to middle school. That transition from elementary to middle school is a big one. The other piece I just wanted to highlight is I gave an engagement survey this year. Middle school is a little bit tougher to measure because they aren't classes that they're taking for credit. So the high school or secondary program, you can measure the students that are successfully completing credit classes or classes for credit. In middle school, it really is keeping them engaged in school and hopefully keeping them there for that 18 days that you're not wanting to drop that enrollment. So it was interesting to note that 80% of the students that took the survey said that school's challenging for them, but 50% were excited for summer school and 75% enjoyed summer school. So even though school's in a challenging time during the school year for them, the engagement seems to be high and intrinsic motivation is high for middle school, summer school. Any questions for me about middle school?
Jim.
Maybe you said it and I missed it, but was it virtual or in person?
Yep, we were virtual as well. We did the synchronous and asynchronous learning activities.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, thanks again. Next.
So my name's Alice Wimpkin, and in the district, I'm assistive technology consultant. And then in the summer, Erin and I work together with the Extended School Year Program, or ESY, and it's for our students in pre-K through 12th grade. And it's determined by the IEP team, so students may continue to work on skills that they were focusing on during the school year, emerging skills, skills where we feel, based on data, they may struggle with recoupment or regression. And so Erin and I had a lot of ideas that we really wanted to focus on, but then COVID hit, and so of course everything went virtual, and we thought, how in the world are we gonna do ESY virtually? But we did it, and it was June 8th through July 24th. I can't tell you how hard the teachers worked. We had teachers working with parents and related services, PT, OT, speech, and everybody just worked together to schedule. We had one teacher that I know for sure worked during the day, and she worked with her students at night. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody knew just how hard that they all worked, and they did it. It wasn't even us. We just were just amazed. And so when we looked at the numbers from 2019 to 2020, the numbers were pretty stable, which we were surprised because we just didn't think that synchronous and asynchronous virtual extended school year was going to work. But we were just so happy that the students and parents and they all got together and we could continue to provide what they needed. So it was a success, but for next year, we have a lot of ideas. We wanted to bring in like in-school field trips, and we had all kinds of things planned, so we're really hoping that that's something that we'll be able to do. So, does anyone have questions for us at all? Yes.
Robin, go ahead.
As I noticed through a couple of these reports, it talks about numbers registered and numbers attending. So if you could explain to me the difference of that, is number attending total numbers, or is that an average daily attendance rate? And then why do some not attend when they're registered? Or what is your opinion about that?
Registration opens for ESY. When can they start?
Well, so registration for ESY, it's determined by the IEP team. So and parents are part of that team, and so then typically students will register and we get, we have numbers but then in the end, sometimes other things come up, or, with COVID, maybe they determine later on that it just wasn't a good fit for their family at that time. But it seems like there always is, no matter what, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, there's always maybe a little bit larger number that register, and then in the end, there may be something that, life took over or another reason that maybe they don't end up attending.
In a spring IEP meeting, it's one of the topics of discussion for parents and the case managers and the IEP team to decide, is extended school year something that the child would benefit from to extend their support services in the spring. So sometimes those decisions are made in January or February. And even without COVID, there are some families where plans change for summer. And so it might have been a decision with the IEP team that was made, and then something has changed, so the registration numbers will usually decline by the time the programming starts.
Yep.
All right, anything else? Thanks so much.
All right, my next task is to get us back on track up here, putting my tech skills on display. We'll see. While I'm doing this, my name is Jennifer Free, and I am the coordinator of adult education and the Even Start Family Literacy Program here in Fargo. We also have a satellite site at NDSCS in Wapaton, where we have adult EL, GED, and ABE computer literacy and citizenship classes offered as well. But what I'll get to talk to you about today is the Fargo information. And as everyone else has stated, this was a summer unlike any other. Our team and the Adult Learning Center, both adult education and Even Start, really adapted. They pivoted, they changed daily. And they really put in 110% for the students that we get to serve. Our numbers were a little lower than in the past overall, but as we pulled together the numbers, I was pleasantly surprised that we were still able to have 267 seat options for students to attend. We started in the beginning of June with summer school for both adult education and Even Start. And Even Start is our family literacy program that serves birth to age 5, along with their parents who are attending adult education. And so we hadn't been able to enroll new families since March. We weren't able to do our assessments for the most part virtually. We didn't have permission to do that until about May or towards the end of May, and some weren't able to be done virtually. So we had to really wait till we could get new adult learners and Even Start kiddos into the school to be able to assess them to get ready to enroll. But while the Even Start kids were there, virtually, we saw them on Zoom. Teachers created videos of the normal routines that we would do in the classrooms at Agassiz so that families could watch and rewatch them at home. And we got tons of pictures from parents with their children next to the TV, replaying the songs and hearing stories about how those kiddos really just wanted to grab their backpack and get to school. So it was a little hard to hear, and we missed them a lot, but it was fun to see that we were still able to provide some service to them. Because a lot of birth to 5 schooling or age-appropriate activities is not done on Zoom. It's not something that they can just do in a worksheet. Our teachers worked super hard to create literacy bags and activities to go home, and we did distribution in the parking lot of Agassiz about every 2 or 3 weeks throughout summer. And so those families got books and materials to be able to do some activities that went alongside with what was being done on Zoom and what followed with the videos. Even Start ended in July, in the beginning part of July, and then we continued with our adult ed summer school, and that was still all done virtually. We did both asynchronous and synchronous online activities. We had a component of phone-based instruction. We hear a lot in adult ed about the digital divide for students, and so not all of our students have access to a computer or something with a lot of data, and so we were able to do some phone-based instruction that went alongside with the print-based resources that students were either able to pick up or we had delivered with the support of some of our community agencies to their homes. And so it looked a lot different. It was intense, but the students were all really grateful to be able to have that option. The teachers were happy to be able to serve their students in this way. And then in the beginning of June, we were excited to make yet another change in our plan, and we were able to offer on-site testing. And so that's where some of our enrollment testing could happen so we could enroll new students into adult ed, especially those that we weren't able to serve who didn't have a computer at home. We couldn't administer that test online to get them connected to adult EL or GED or ABE classes. So having them be able to come on site was great to get them started. Even when we had prospective students that we weren't able to enroll, we did provide them with some free resources or were able to mail out some things so they could do some self-learning, and we would check in with them during our virtual outreach hours. And so it's not that they weren't served, it was just a little different. They weren't technically enrolled. And then we were excited to be able to offer to our GD students who had the hardest time engaging on completely distance learning, but we were able to get them back on site and do some practice testing and get them actually taking their official GED testing, which had really been paused since April. And I think that about covers all of our pieces. Are there any questions?
Any questions from board members? All right, again, thank you very much. The good news keeps on coming.
While Liz is here, I want to thank her because she is the reason that we were able to get one-to-one devices for EL Summer School in June. She worked really hard to get them out, and then when we took them back, she worked really hard to help us out there, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, present. Thank you. My name is Lori Nappy, and I want to tell you a little bit about English Language Development Summer School. With COVID hitting, we had to switch gears in a hurry, so we swapped our transportation budget for virtual learning kits, and the students got to keep everything that was inside the kit. Each teacher got to decide what she needed for their grade level. And then the kids were encouraged to use the materials in their kit for the rest of the summer to keep the learning going. So we gathered our materials, we packed our bags, and we invited the students to come to Agassiz. This is a picture of Mrs. Friesen, our middle school EL teacher, welcoming a family to Agassiz to pick up their bags. Then the next day was the first day of summer school. I crossed my fingers and held my breath and said, oh my gosh, is this gonna happen? At about an hour after school started at 8 o'clock, about 9:15, I get a text message from Mrs. Tim. And it said, after our first hour of reading, writing, and math, we were all ready for a movement break and dance to Cat Party. They were little champs. And this is just a 15-second video. I apologize for the quality because it was a text message from her to me. Oops, sorry, back. It was a text message from her to me, so. So if she can get all of her kids after an hour of reading and they needed a movement break to stand up and do the cat party, I knew this summer was going to make it. We were going to do just fine. We utilized, we had half synchronous, half asynchronous. We utilized Exact Path, which is part of Edmentum. It's an adaptive diagnostic assessment. It's student-paced, math and language arts, grade-friendly. On a regular year, you could input your NDSA scores for each student, and then it would take them from where they are and move them forward. If the student achieves mastery, it goes on. If they don't, it refreshes and it keeps them interested. So we really felt like we were able to, between the Zoom sessions that were from 8 to 11:30 Monday through Thursday, and then on Friday from 8 to 12:30, we really felt like we were able to meet student needs. But unfortunately, as by this private chat from a student to Mrs. Strobel, we weren't able to meet all their needs because this student said, "Teacher, my foot is stuck." And that was really hard to fix for her over virtual. We had increased attendance. Usually we have about 50% attendance. We increased to about 71, and I think the reason for that is one teacher per class, 15 kids in a class, and no pre-K because we don't get reimbursed for them. But because we were virtual, we didn't have a few kids at this school and a few kids at this school, and because we could put them all together, we had increased attendance, so I was proud of that. On the last day of summer school, we had school for 1 hour virtually, and then the teachers invited the students to come to Agassiz to return their devices. We received more devices back than we gave out, and that was from siblings coming with their children that were in summer school. Their siblings came with and returned devices that they were unable to return at the end of spring. But the real reason is Freezy Pops. If you offer a child a Freezy Pop, they will come. With increased attendance, the teachers felt like they had such increased appreciation too, and we couldn't figure that out. When the students came to Agassiz, teachers were getting candy and flowers and stuffed animals. This is an email from one parent to a kindergarten teacher. It said, "Dear Mrs. O'Leary, you are so kind and patient to the kids. It is really hard to give online classes for such a long time every day. We are very grateful to you. We are also very grateful to all the teachers and staff who organized this summer school. My daughter likes you very much. We will miss you. It's so good to see you tomorrow in person. Good night and see you tomorrow." So we couldn't figure that out. What is it about this that the parents are so much more appreciative, and our families and our students? And then we started talking and thinking, we didn't send the kids to school for 3 weeks. We came into their home for 3 weeks. We were there. When the families came, the parents, the siblings that weren't in the class, they recognized the teacher, came running up to them, and then, of course, because of COVID, we had a little barrier so that they wouldn't give hugs, but we wanted to so badly. This is my favorite thing to end on. Mrs. Schwartzrock, from a student, got a pocket full of love. And that's what we got back from our students, was pockets full of love. And we hope that we gave them a good education for that summer. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Jim?
Thank you very much. And thanks to the entire team for what they're doing. Could you help me understand, we had 179 people who attended, more had registered, but it sounded like less dropped out than normal.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean when only 71% have completion? What does completion mean?
As far as attendance goes, that means that 71% of the people who registered attended the full amount of the classes. We have some who might have attended partially, but 71 is full attendance, 71%.
Thank you.
Up from about 50 in a normal school year.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, for all your work, all the information, and great opportunities for our kids. All right, are we okay to move on to item B, administrative policy updates? Memo 50, Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. Thank you, board members. Every year annually, Cabinet will go through and update a set of policies. As you know, we have several administrative policies, and then we will provide an update to the board. Last year, we redid our policy monitoring schedule, so I think all policies now get updated or at least reviewed once every 4 years. This year, all of the policies that were either updated, changed, or removed or added are included in your board memo with a brief description of what they are and what some of those changes are made. The most significant probably change is the removal of 2 separate policies related to Title IX per new legal advice, and I think for those of you that will be participating in the North Dakota School Boards Association legal seminar, you'll get some of that update as well. Some new federal guidelines that we have updated our Title IX policy. It's going to be far more comprehensive, but it's also absorbed into AP 4060, 5060, and 6060. So you will see that as well. There are a set of administrative policies, the 2000 series, that were removed. The only reason that those were removed is because those aren't really policies. They're HR procedural documents, or they're job descriptions or philosophical documents. I'm making a guess here. If my guess would be that they were probably once listed as AP policies because they're probably given by the School Boards Association for school districts that don't have a governance structure in place. One of them was like a superintendent job description, which we have housed as in our job description documents. One was a philosophy on school administration, which is a process document. So I think that's why those were removed as well. All the other policy updates are kind of there. That is pretty much it. The only other policies that we are reviewing, or we might be reviewing throughout this year, is learning from COVID and the unique situations where telework might be an option for some of our district staff. That is a current policy that we are still working on developing of what does that look like as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Anyone have questions regarding this memo? Robin?
So you're on a 4-year cycle, I assume, with administrative policies, but I know the answer to this, but administration also reviews policies as needed. So you don't wait for that 4-year cycle.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Last year we had made, we will also make some policy changes as needed throughout the year. Last year we changed the nutrition services policy, we changed the student dress policy throughout the year, and the inclement weather policy, like twice. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, the next item is the FEA report. We do not have anyone from the FEA here today. Board members received an email from FEA President Jennifer Mastrud with some information included in that email, and also an explanation that those folks are very busy with conferences right now. So we're thanking them for the work that they are doing so that our families can participate still in conferences during this COVID pandemic, and we will look forward to hearing from them at our next meeting. So moving on to item D, the superintendent's report. Dr. Gandhi.
I know we have some rich conversation with us in front of us in the business agenda, and I just kind of presented about administrative policy, so I will defer my time.
All right, thank you. Could we have a motion? my thought would be we'll get through the consent agenda and take a little break and come back. Could we have a motion for approval? Robin?
I move approval of the consent agenda with the HR addendum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Okay, motion and second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's take a 10-minute break. It might take that long before we get back here, and if we could please make sure to wear our masks on the way out and back in, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Moving on to the business section of the agenda, the first item, item A, is Memo 51, and it's a recommendation on Woodrow Wilson High School name. I am going to turn this over to the Communications, Engagement, and Advocacy Chair, Nikki Gullickson.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm just going to go through pretty much the board memo here just to kind of give you guys the steps that we went through. But as you know, at the August 11th meeting, we were given this task to start to add this to our work plan and take a look at this. So the first thing that we did is we worked closely with administration. There is a naming policy. At the time, there was not a renaming policy. So in order to set an effective process, we wanted to update that policy. And in doing so, I guess we've got all the dates here, but AP 3260 was reviewed by the committee at its September 3rd meeting and reviewed by the full board at the September 8th meeting. And the finalized policy was then published September 9th, so September 10th, when we met, we created a community engagement process to gather thoughts from within our community. And that was launched from September 16th to October 1st, approximately 15 days for community input. And we have our results here, so I encourage any of you who want to look in depth to go ahead and go to the school board tab and look for those specific results. But in summary, we had 253 respondents. We received a variety of input from students, alumni, staff, community members, parents. You can see all the breakdown when you go to that. We have several charts that categorized all the results. What we did is we went along according to the policy and asked questions that were directly related to that policy so we could review it accordingly. And a rubric was also created along those same lines so that we had consistent lines that we were reviewing. But out of the 253 responses, we had 38.7% opted to retain or keep the name Woodrow Wilson. We had 61.3% who opted to rescind or remove the name. So that's probably the best statistic to take a look at this point. Also, with all of these pie charts, you will see the rubric and how the committee voted on that rubric. By being as thorough as we could in creating the process we did, we wanted to set a process that could be easily followed for years to come should something like this surface again, so that we are being consistent with how we apply these things. And at the end of all of this, we have decided that our committee would like to bring to the board a recommendation to rescind the name of Woodrow Wilson High School effective for the 2021 school year, or 21-22 school year, excuse me. And then if this is approved by the full board tonight, then the renaming process will commence right afterwards.
Thank you, Nikki. Does anyone have questions for Nikki? Robin?
I expect a motion will come forth here pretty quickly from somebody in that committee. I do want to recognize the new employee, Tamara Usselman. I know that you followed her outline as far as the questions that you asked, and she was vital in this process in gathering community feedback.
She was, very much so. Thank you so much for helping to guide us through this process, which is a new one to the district and important. I want to make I'll make a few comments, but want to acknowledge the individuals from the community that not only came to speak to us and send messages to us and make comments in our media, or whether that's social media or a newspaper, regarding this even before the process started officially by the school board. You called us to really conduct this process and get this going and push us. So thank you for initiating that. And then thank you for sticking with us while this policy was being revamped and developed for renaming. And then additionally, thank you for the comments that were shared through the public comment call out that was through the Fargo School Board website. My count, I wanted to take account of some of the comments that were shared through this. Certainly there were many people that gave an answer of either rescind or don't rescind, but some people shared comments. And from my count, 92 comments were made in favor of rescinding, and 69 comments were made in saying not rescind. And I counted about 7 that were kind of questionable. I wasn't quite sure in terms of the clarity. So thanks additionally to people that shared comments beyond just a yes or no for rescinding. That helped me make my decision as we were going through the process. Does anyone else have any questions? And Robin, you were talking about a motion. A motion can come from anyone so that we can continue on. David.
Of the 253 respondents, were there provisions within this survey where people could not fill out, say, 3 or 4 surveys?
Dr. Gandhi or Anne Marie, is there information on that?
No, I do believe that individuals could fill it out multiple times. They were required to include their name and identifying information. So I can't tell you right now, just looking at the memo, if the 253 is a unique number or if it includes some individuals that might have filled it out more than once.
Thank you for that question, David. I also wanted to mention that in terms of individuals that spoke or sent emails to us, at least this is my own account, between July 1st and basically now, I received or heard from 14 individuals in our community talking about and encouraging us to rescind the name. And I received emails or public comment from 7 individuals asking us to keep the name. Jim.
First of all, I want to thank the Communications Committee and the administration for putting a process in place, because without it, I wouldn't have been in a position to make a decision tonight. I had the opportunity last week to spend a couple hours over in Agassiz with David, touring his facility and programs. And one of the questions I asked, and I asked him again this evening, what are the students of Woodrow Wilson feeling, the current students? And 2 things became real apparent. Number one, some of them are a little probably upset that they have been identified in this process as somehow maybe being in less than a great environment. Nothing could be farther from the truth. It is probably from a culture and climate perspective our best building, or certainly one of our best buildings. So the name Woodrow Wilson means one thing to people that have researched and spoken to us both for and against, and I understand all of that. It means something totally different to the students and the staff that are in that building. They know who they are. They know their identity. And they are perfectly comfortable changing the name of their school as well if it makes it better for the community to understand how inclusive they are. And it was because of that that I'm going to be in support of this motion that I'm about to make, that the Fargo School Board rescind the name of Woodrow Wilson High School and begin the renaming process.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Tracy. Thank you. Any other discussion? David?
I have to, everything Jim said about Woodrow Wilson is correct. In my opinion, it's the brightest gem we have in our Fargo public school system. It's taken kids that some people might say are hopeless, and they've turned out to be fabulous. I have my problem with this is that I don't exactly know what we're starting by rescinding this name, because we had many of the speakers who met before us mention many other names that would incorporate names of our current schools. And is this going to be a snowball effect where all of a sudden we're going to see people questioning Madison because he did nothing about slavery, or who knows? I'm struggling with this. I'm not entirely sure now how I'm going to vote. There were some questions in here. Was Woodrow Wilson's behavior conventional at the time of the behavior or the naming? The majority of the respondents said yes. We're in different times. What he did certainly is not to be condoned or applauded, but as much of the literature that we were given said, he was getting a very great deal of pressure from the southern states, because this was this was not that far past the Civil War, and the feelings were very, very difficult. There was another question here. It said, despite the objectionable behavior, were other aspects of Woodrow Wilson's life and work especially noteworthy? Again, the respondents, the majority said yes. Or, 48.1%. He did do good things, particularly toward women's rights. Nobody's entirely good and nobody's entirely bad. And I think if they opened up if they started questioning me, they'd probably find many of the things that some people would consider offensive in my past, despite anything good I may have done. I'm having a very difficult time renaming Woodrow Wilson based on what we've heard to this point.
I would suggest that while we can look into the future and know that we have other buildings that are part of Fargo Public Schools, that what we are talking about tonight is regarding Woodrow Wilson. And I would say for myself, we have a policy in place now. If there is a request from individuals that we take a look at other building names, we have that policy in place, and that's something that can be done. But our decision and our conversation tonight does not cause me any agony or angst in terms of what might come in the future, because I do believe we have a good, strong policy in place. Tracy and then Robin.
You actually took many of my words there. As a member of this committee, I can assure you that there was rich dialogue around all of those things that you brought up. That was really the work of the committee. And that we did, the majority of the front-loaded part of this work was to come up with a policy for how we proceed in the future. So I would just reassure you that many meetings and hours were spent on those very things, and I'm proud of the work that we did.
Robin?
I would say thank you, committee, for doing this work. We often hear that we don't seek enough community feedback. If people don't answer to the call, I don't know how else to respond. We're doing the best that we can to reach out to our community. Granted, people that are hyper interested in this issue are going to be more likely to respond. I looked at the survey myself, and I did not complete it because I wanted it to be very neutral. But the name was you had to put your name on there, and I think that would discourage people from filling out the survey multiple times. I have a lot of respect for committee work that has been delegated by the board. Therefore, I will be supporting this motion.
Dr. Gandhi.
David, thank you for your questions. I think I am also extremely proud of the policy and the committee's work. I think just a couple things that I would point out regarding the data. First off, the community data is not the only data used by the committee to make the determination. I think collecting the survey data from the community was one piece of data that was used in more in-depth consideration with everything else. But then secondly as well, I think when you look at survey data and you say the majority wasn't, or the majority said yes, just cautious around that term majority, because in both of the questions that you referred, there was a unknown answer. So yes, it's, I think both of those are below 50%, and there was a group of the participants that didn't know if his behavior was conventional at the time or not as well. So just kind of making sure that we take that into consideration.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks for the committee for all your hard work. You did a great job in getting that. And so in the renaming and the naming processes and that, I think it's really important to note in the future is what makes schools is relationships with the parents and the teachers and the students. And to me, that's the most important part. You know, I grew up in Stanley, North Dakota, and the name of the high school was Severson High School. I have no idea who Severson was or is, but more importantly, I do remember those relationships with Joe Lukacs, Marv Ardall, and all of the other teachers that were in the building. So to me, that's the most important, is the relationships that you build with your teachers. So that's all.
Any other comments before I make one more? So whatever is decided tonight, it's not an attempt to erase history. That's something that's been discussed in the past. History is recorded, and in history remains. I would encourage that, again, whatever is decided tonight, that if it is to rescind that name as the motion was made, that there is work that's done by the district to figure out how to communicate that history and this decision-making process. And again, it's not an attempt to say that what has happened in the past didn't happen. We can't erase history anyways. One comment that was made through the website by a citizen, I would like to read. I don't have that person's name, but this is what that person said. The act of naming of buildings, schools, and even structures are often going to eventually be problematic. Community standards change over time, and so a name, which at one point in time was a symbol of progress, can eventually come to be seen as backwards and behind the times. When the community standards shift in this way, it is entirely appropriate to rename things to reflect the new community standards. It is our school in our time, not the past school. To not reconsider such things in the light of new information or even new values is to value tradition over progress. It is not a slight to the past to rename things. It is a reflection of our growth and progress as a modern society. Are there any other comments? Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Gullickson?
Yes.
Holden?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Brian Nelson?
Yes.
Robin Nelson?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Benson?
Yes.
President Knudsen?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. On to item B, Fargo Public Schools Smart Restart Plan Review, Memo 52. This is a memo that comes from me. The couple paragraphs at the beginning talk about the direction that the governor gave boards of education in terms of putting together restart plans for the 2021 school year, and the necessity for boards to approve those plans before school started. It talks about the special meeting that we had where we approved that plan. It gives a little bit of detail in regard to 11 sections of the Smart Restart Plan and what's included in each section. It talks about the guiding principles used to develop the plan. Number 1, ensuring the safety and well-being of all students and employees. Number 2, promoting equity and accessibility to learning for all students. 3, providing instructional delivery systems to meet the needs of all students. And 4, fostering positive relationships and interactions. The memo also talks about how decisions would be made in terms of instructional levels that our students would be entering into, and that those decisions would be made by a COVID-19 instructional plan committee. We have had, it is not unusual to receive comments from the public, from our citizens regarding something like this, especially as we're in a global pandemic. We ought to be expecting to receive all kinds of feedback regarding our decisions. And so the purpose of, and we have received all kinds of feedback. And so the purpose of this, really a conversation as I see it here tonight, is an opportunity for board members to have dialogue again regarding, we haven't been together so much formally since the approval of the plan to have much of an in-depth dialogue. There's been lots of work that's been done by administration and by that instructional plan committee, as we know, meeting every 2 weeks. But this gives us an opportunity to have some dialogue. I would like Tracy Newman, she is the board's liaison to the instructional plan committee, to start by giving us some updates, talking about how she works on that committee. She is also a physician in our community, and if we have questions for her, then she's open to them. And then after that, administration. Curious, as we know, we approved a plan that was going to be flexible and nimble. And so we know that there have been some changes along the way. And so Tracy and administration, if you are able to help guide us through maybe some of the high levels, you know, it's a very in-depth plan, but guide us through some of those high levels, and then we'll see where the discussion goes and where we end this evening. So go ahead, Tracy. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. I was asked to sort of just provide a summary of how the committee has been working and how I feel as the board liaison to that committee things have been going. I first just want to take an opportunity to thank the board for appointing me to this position. It is a role and a responsibility that I take very seriously. If you've been around me lately, I've made the half joke that it feels like I spend more time and energy on this one committee than the whole school board, which is probably true. But hopefully that's a front-loaded situation, and I'm happy to do the work, and it's valuable work. So thank you for trusting me to represent. Whoops. So first, just to remind ourselves who makes up this committee. It's comprised of a vast array of stakeholders in our district. And that's really important because I believe that they all bring diverse perspectives to the table and to the conversation. I was reading an article in the Forum a few weeks back about NDSU and their faculty really urging and requesting the administration there to include them more in the decisions about how and when to bring students back to NDSU. They even wanted, a say in how many people could attend Bison Bison football games. They really felt as though their voice wasn't being heard. And I think that's important, and I think it's a tribute to one thing our district has done really well, is include all of those voices from the beginning. We have 18 members at this committee, and just to summarize, there's multiple district-level administrators who serve different roles in our district. There's building-level leaders, so we have 3 principals, 1 elementary, middle, and high school. And the same, we have 3 teachers at each level, parents that represent each level, a para and support staff. We have an epidemiology present from Cass Public Health, and then myself. And I've spoken to Rebecca before. Sometimes I feel like I wear two hats on this committee, and it's sometimes challenging, but I do the best that I can. I was appointed to be a school board member, and I take that very seriously, to be a liaison to you guys, but also to be a voice for the public, and try to convey to the committee the feelings of our constituents and the feelings of our families, because that's an important piece in this conversation. And I also do my best to provide, if needed, any medical expertise, particularly around pediatrics. So what are some things that we examine every time we meet every 2 weeks? This is all public information on the district website, but I think it bears just repeating tonight. So we look at multiple facets of information every time we meet, and one piece of the puzzle is not deemed more important than the other. We try to just cumulatively look at all the information that we have available. Sometimes members of the committee will even present things that aren't represented here, and we take that into consideration. These things are changing quickly, and we do our best to adapt to them. So usually we start by looking at any guidance from the state or any guidance coming down from the governor. And then our epidemiologists will present Cass County level data. Within that, we've looked from the beginning at transmission, hospitalization, and death rate within our county. We more recently have begun looking at the CDC guidelines for reopening schools, and a different rubric of information, the Minnesota model. I recently was appointed to represent North Dakota on the Council for School Health in a national organization by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And in that role, I get to take part in phone calls and Zooms with physicians and district leaders really across the nation. And I learn a lot. No one has this figured out, I can assure you that. And everyone is really doing their best. People are trial and error, different things. But a message that has been really clear in those calls is these guidelines and these national recommendations should really be used as starting points. They're meant to be used as guidelines, and there certainly is not a one-size-fits-all. I wish there was. It would make it a lot easier. But what's working in San Francisco, of course, may not be working here in Fargo. And the message that they send repeatedly is, we really encourage you to utilize your local level data that's relevant to your population. And we really advise you to be making these task force, making these committees, and use as much information as you can at a local level. So in my opinion, that's exactly what this committee does. More recently too, we've started looking at data from within our schools and within our district. We also look at our ability to implement some of the mitigation strategies such as social distancing, and then of course our staff leave data and our substitute fill rate. So I just wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about evidence, because I feel like we as a board get many emails, and this committee gets many emails. I personally receive emails. I know that this is a frustrating process. So first of all, as a mother of 3 children in our district, in a busy home, there's no one who appreciates schedules and routines and predictability more than me. And so it does seem like sometimes this committee is flip-flopping our recommendations or making drastic changes, and I just wanted to try to address that tonight. So as a physician, the gold standard of care is something called evidence-based medicine. And what evidence-based medicine really means is that we are always asking further questions, even when we have seeming answers. We are always pushing the research to do more. Let's dive deeper. Let's keep asking. And because of that, recommendations and guidelines change, and sometimes they change often. An example from my profession, we used to counsel families to have babies sleep on their stomachs. Your parents might have been told that. And then we learned about SIDS. And now we literally tell you the direct opposite, to never have your baby sleep on their stomach. We had a big public health campaign for Back to Sleep, and that has saved countless of lives. Another example, we used to tell families not to feed their babies peanuts till after the first birthday, and evidence-based medicine taught us about food allergies, and now we literally tell you the opposite. So it's frustrating, but I often say to my patients, it's the beauty/frustration of evidence-based care. And if there's ever a time that new data is emerging or information is changing quickly, it is in the middle of an international pandemic. And so it is my opinion that if this committee were to just make a stagnant decision and rubber stamp that and have it just stand for an entire entire semester or even school year, we would really be failing the community. I think we'd be failing our district. So we do flip-flop and the recommendations change, but it is because we are staying true to the data. And one of the things that's been interesting in the pediatric literature and probably the medical community as a whole is this idea of reframing the question. A tool we use often to make medical decisions is a risk versus benefit equation when we're trying to make complex decisions about patient care. And so the question has been asked lately, it's almost a risk versus risk. What is the risk of COVID versus the risk of children not being in school? And, you know, I think in March when this pandemic began, all the literature and research immediately went to risk of COVID, appropriately so. You know, how is this virus going to play out? How is it going to affect children? What is this going to mean for schools and our community? And as time has gone on, people have started to ask different questions. We now have 6 or 7 months of children not fully being in school, and that has been an interesting form of data, which I'd like to talk about tonight. So on the one side of the scale, I guess, or the one risk, you know, what is the risk of COVID? Again, we need more data. There is not a general consensus in the medical community about this. I certainly wish there was, but we just don't have enough information to make direct decisions. But I do think it's important to summarize what we do know, because there has been excellent research that has occurred. So an article I point to frequently is this JAMA Pediatrics meta-analysis. It was just printed recently this month. When I won't give you a statistics recap, Bob, maybe you appreciate that little pyramid, but when we talk about different levels and quality of evidence, a meta-analysis is at the very top. It is the highest level that we can make research-based recommendations from. And the reason for that is it pools multiple already well-done studies together to give you a higher data, a higher pool to make information from or make decisions from. So in this example, they compiled 32 studies done from COVID in children from around the world, and that gave us very large numbers to look at. And what that data showed overwhelmingly was that children 10 and under are much less likely to be infected with SARS-CoV-2, and they're much less likely to have secondary complications. Thank goodness. Also, the researchers found there's little evidence of children being good transmitters or super spreaders of this virus, particularly in group settings. And one that stood out to me, 3 of the studies examined were done in Australia, Ireland, and Singapore, and they actually involved contact tracing within schools. And all of those overwhelmingly showed very little evidence of kids spreading SARS-CoV-2 to adults. Again, we don't know enough to draw firm conclusions, and this could change next week. That's the way it works. But this is what we do know to date, and I think it's very promising. The other end of the risk scale, what is the risk? You know, what are some of the mental and physical effects of children not being in school? I believe this is something that probably isn't being talked about enough. And I hope to, as we have emerging research come, that it can be a bigger part of the conversation as a pediatrician. So we know that we are seeing increases in pediatric obesity and elevated BMIs across the country. We're seeing dramatic increases in screen time and social isolation. We are seeing elevations of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, especially in our adolescents. Unfortunately, our emergency rooms are seeing record high numbers of domestic violence and child abuse. I think it's important to remember that our schools really serve as a safety mechanism for child abuse, right? Teachers and school counselors are mandated reporters, and so when we don't have that in place, things are falling through the cracks. There's also a ton of literature about food insecurity and all the problems that brings for entire families. There's also new data looking at educational loss and developmental harms to children. Unfortunately, this disproportionately affects our socioeconomically vulnerable, especially children of color. That has been true of COVID-19 in general, how it's affected populations, but in particular, those populations not being in school, we have seen a disproportionate effect. Children who are already suffering from mental health and chronic and physical health conditions are also disproportionately affected, as well as their entire families. And then there's many new sources suggesting that children are actually contracting the virus outside of school in the other areas that they are. And there's a new conversation about, is it actually safer just to have them contained in one classroom? More to come, hopefully, on that. But one area that I've been interested in is some new research on the economic consequences when parents are forced to stay home and provide care for all these children not in school. And even a societal level of health harms to our community when these are families of healthcare workers. And then just last, a little note on masking. It's something that we receive a lot of correspondence about and is talked about a lot in the public. I first will say, I like to envision the Swiss cheese model. When we talk about public health mitigation strategies, not one strategy is perfect. They all have holes. And so the idea is if you line enough of them up together, sort of like slices of Swiss cheese, if the virus gets through one, you have the barrier there to prevent the next one. Hopefully you have enough in place that we're preventing spread. Masking is one slice of cheese. It's not perfect. What are some of the others? Social distancing, hand hygiene, disinfecting surfaces, testing capacity, quarantine, etc. But masking is an interesting one because it's one that we do have a lot of literature and data about. I'm sure many of you here know that the governor recently changed recommendations around masking in school and what that means for quarantine. So now if a child tests positive in a classroom and you are deemed a close contact of that person, if both parties are wearing masks, those close contacts no longer have to quarantine for 14 days. And why is that? Well, public health officials really around the country agree that there is significant evidence that wearing a mask will mitigate the spread of this virus. Interestingly, out last week from a CDC report, Arizona coronavirus cases dropped 75% after masking requirements were put in place. That is not an insignificant number. There's anecdotal stories that you can read on CDC website. There's hairstylists in Missouri where among 139 clients that were exposed to 2 symptomatic stylists who later had confirmed COVID-19, both the clients and the stylists were wearing masks, and there was not a single transmission that occurred. And then really when we look at our district-specific data, it is evident that the cases are extremely low of those. So one of the questions I ask our epidemiologists at our meetings is, okay, of the amount of positives we had over the last 2 weeks in our district, of the people you contact traced, how many of those then became positive? In some districts, it's reported as 0. Apparently ours is not 0, but I was told it was extremely low. So I find that promising. And we know that districts all around the state and the country are bringing students and teachers back into classrooms, sometimes in areas where cases are rising in their county. And we just aren't seeing outbreaks. We really aren't seeing spikes in cases. This is not 100%. We could have this next week. It's just, this is what we know to date. And West Fargo, I think, voted last night to bring back their children in person, starting in elementary. Certainly we know in Bismarck, another larger district in our state, they have brought children back full-time in person, masks not mandated, and we know the Burleigh County rates are exceedingly high, and reassuringly, we have not seen cases spike because of that. Grand Forks, another neighboring larger district, they've brought back children K through 8 actually from the beginning, and we just haven't seen it. So it is interesting to look at what districts are doing around us and how that might affect us as we go forward. These are incredibly complex decisions and no one has the answer. And then just to make the point about masks, that healthcare workers, this is what we've been doing all along. So we've been going to work, every day since March, wearing a mask, seeing patients that are wearing masks. And once again, you don't see transmission of cases really in clinics and hospitals. So it seems that masks work. With that, I'm happy to try to answer questions or have further discussion. I just wanted to end on one final note about grace and continuing to extend grace to one another. I read a quote recently that stuck with me. It was said by St. Augustine, "For grace is given not because we have done good work, but in order that we may be able to do good work." And I think that's really important. I think everyone involved in these conversations cares about kids and wants the best for our community. They care about the safety of our teachers and the education of our children. And I would just really implore everyone involved to continue to extend grace to one another and continue to assume good intentions, because I think that's what we all have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Jim, I think you had your hand up a couple slides back, and then Robin.
You know, I was just curious, Tracy, on under 10 are much less likely to be infected by COVID. Is there a rationale for that? I get the data would tell us that, but it could be, for instance, they're less social to begin with?
I think there's not one answer. It's probably a multitude of multiple factors. And interestingly, the hard data I've seen is 10 and under. There are some studies that look at the 12 to 14 range and separate that different from adolescents. And those numbers are also promising, not as promising as under 10, but there does seem to be a lesser range in the 12 to 14 range. Yeah, I think habits and I think socialization is a part of it. To get way more technical, some of it has to do with the amount of receptors in the nasopharynx and the throat as we age, and younger children have less of those to actually contract the virus, according to one study. So they may not carry it as much and spread it to others as much. One could also argue younger children just comply with masks and all of the things we ask them to do a little bit better than teenagers, having a 13-year-old in my own house. But there's probably a multitude of things.
Robin?
I have 3 comments and a question. I would start off by saying I serve as an alternate on this committee, and I don't get to vote or speak unless you are absent, and you're doing a wonderful job, not only presenting the board, but also presenting your expertise and your professional life. Never apologize for what strengths you bring to this board that you have in your life, because that is one of the reasons I feel that many of us are elected. So I respect that. Number 2, in my full-time job, I run the Boys and Girls Clubs and the Fargo Youth Commission. We've been open since June. It's been pretty containable from my perspective, but one thing I have learned is how important staff buy-in and education is, because it makes it very difficult. It's a lot of work. We're not going to make everybody happy. To your point, my kindergartners through 3rd graders, they're the ones that are tattling, saying you don't have your mask on, and that's just natural. But it gets a little bit more difficult in the 3rd through 5th grade, and middle school is actually pretty good. So the upper elementary has been what I've observed to be awkward. My 3rd comment is I was on a conference call today, and Pam Sagnes from the North Dakota Department of Health used the term that COVID is a signpost for this generation. And I think this will be a very defining time for our children. And I could not stress enough how we as adults need to set an example for our children. We have seen a lot of behaviors that aren't helpful and some that are. And I think that we as not only parents but community members need to step up and lead and be good examples for our students. And 4th, I'm going to put you on the spot. There has been a request to dissolve this committee. Will you talk about the worth of this committee and the work that has gone into those that are on it?
Yeah, thank you. I first wanted to just echo a little bit about that signpost comment. That is really awesome. And the literature I present tonight, this is only the immediate effects we know. It is completely unknown the effects of these children in 5, 10, 15 years. This will probably be life-defining for them. So I think that's really important to recognize. Secondly, thank you for your words. I 100% would back the work this committee is doing. Again, I'm on multiple different nationwide groups as a pediatrician, and I'm always impressed with the work that Fargo is doing. I mean, we are doing almost exactly what is recommended by national experts. Keep it local, keep as many diverse voices at the table as you can. Keep listening to public health, keep listening to your county population data. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. One thing I'm always taken aback by at these meetings, everyone is just trying so hard. It's really awesome, a tribute to our community. The amount of forethought and preparation that all 18 people bring to the table, it's just it's so wonderful to be a part of. So I guess I don't know a reason to dissolve this committee, and I would be pushed to wonder how we could do it better or how we could do it different, because we have people around us asking to do similar things. I don't know if that answers your question.
So to follow up on this and maybe to restate from administration, so the schedule, right, as schools and children are starting to go back to school, what are the dates that our middle schoolers will return to hybrid and our elementary will return to almost 100% in person? Because I don't think we're that far behind in pacing around our area.
So as of now, based on the last decision made by the COVID-19 Instructional Plan Committee, elementary students will return to 4 days of in-person instruction beginning October 26th. The reason that committee is going to start at a 4-day versus a 5-day is a lot around scheduling and two major components, and Missy might be able to go into this a little bit more. But currently, when we had our traditional school schedule, one of the ways that we were able to provide preparation and planning time for our staff is at recess. We were able to have multiple classes have recess at the same time. And oftentimes our paraeducators will be able to watch that. Recess and lunch were tied together, just part of the school schedule and what you're able to do. At this time, we are trying to avoid having multiple classes mix at the same time. So what that requires us to do is separate recess and lunch, which then puts some of the responsibility back on the teachers, so then we have to figure out when to give them planning time as well. The second piece of that is art. Art is another communal class, and until now we've been able to keep it out of the mix. If we were to go back to 5 days of instruction as it was, then are we going to be mixing other classes as well? So I know Missy will be able to talk to that a little bit further. So I think what the committee decided is let's look at the 4 days of return to instruction at the elementary level beginning October 26th. Let's review the data, and then if we feel like, okay, we're comfortable enough to maybe mix kids at recess, then we can maybe go to a 5-day model. The guidance that we get from the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction and Department of Health says that you should look at data for about 28 days. It's 2 incubation periods, and then maybe take a look at that. We have not decided how long would we look at before looking at a 5-day instruction. October 19th is when our 6th through 12th graders will return to a hybrid model. The hybrid schedule has changed from going a 2 to 3 day format to alternating groups to an every other day alternating group with distance learning on Friday. As it compares to other school districts, West Fargo School Board last night, what's a little bit unique than ours about West Fargo's plan is West Fargo's original plan was tied to the county colors. So what West Fargo did last night is they just received permission from their school board that even if the county is in yellow, they can return to in-person instruction. However, West Fargo also has 2 committees. They have a committee that consists similar of 1 board member and district leadership. It's a 7% committee that looks at data on a week-to-week basis. And then they also have their return to plan committee, which includes parents and some other stakeholders as well. They have not decided when they're going to return to elementary and instruction. Yesterday, they said, with the approval of the school board, they will start working on that plan now, but they also want to be able to provide 2 weeks of notice, but I don't know when that 2 weeks will begin.
I just wanted to add, the reason there's the discrepancy of the 19th and the 26th was really just a logistics thing. That week of the 19th is a shortened week. We have Thursday and Friday off, so it was really difficult to bring the elementary kids back, but it made more sense for the hybrid. So that's why the differing dates.
David, you, I think, had your hand up, and then Missy, were you wanting to share some information with us after David's question? Well, go ahead, David, in case your question has anything to do with it, something she might be interested in sharing with us.
I just wanted to thank Tracy for this presentation, and so many of the things that she's pointed out here have simply validate all of the emails we've been getting from parents who have been so insistent about kids going back, the things that I circled on here that were terribly important to me, the anxiety and depression, domestic violence and child abuse, the special education needs. We spent quite a while in our planning committee meeting this morning talking about shifting boundaries to address socioeconomic numbers, and then bang, it hits us right in the face. Those are the people that are probably being hurt the most by this. And we're worried about which school they're going to when we should be worried about the fact that they've got to be in school. And parents being forced to stay home and take care of their kids. This is what we've been hearing in these memos and these emails we've been getting from parents time after time after time. And then when you look at the data she has about children under 10 are less likely to be infected, show that there is very, very little evidence to show that they're super spreaders. I guess it's just showing me what I felt all the time, that particularly in the elementary, and I think to a much greater degree in the middle school and the high school, these kids have got to be back in school. I'm very good friends with a principal who said that you want to see social distancing. Our kids are not mixing. They're not spending time in the hallways mixing together. We're socially distancing them in the lunchroom. He said there's less chance of them being infected here than when they leave the school. And I thank you so much. I first got to know Tracy when I was liaison to Centennial, and she was a PTO president. And just to see how hard she worked and how organized she was, I was so happy to find her on the board. But thank you so much for representing us on this board.
Thank you, David. And Missy, one question that I have, you might be able to help answer. Dr. Gross and Rupak would too, but it has to do with, so everything else that you have heard today here that you might want to address, but mine has to do with mitigation strategies, and we talked about that a little bit already and received some information, but I know that we haven't only been receiving feedback and input from parents. We've been receiving feedback and input from staff, from teachers, from our educators, from individuals that are, our school buildings are workplaces, and we're one of the largest employers in the city of Fargo. Our kids come into our buildings, and their work is to receive education and to learn. And then we have individuals that work for us where their paycheck and their livelihood depends upon it. And we know that there are some folks are a little worried about coming back into the buildings to the extent that we've been talking about now. And so one of the areas I'm wondering about is in regard to mitigation. As Tracy, as you said, in terms of a Swiss cheese approach, what additional layers might we be looking at? In terms of adding some additional slices of cheese, is there anything that we have had to change since the plan that the board approved that does include descriptions of mitigation strategies, but is there anything that's been learned or that you think we might need to be putting into place additionally? So that's one of my main questions where I'd like to learn more. Thank you.
So the first thing that what we're looking at is masks. And one of the things that happened across the state of North Dakota was action research by superintendents. And they were all asked in a period of time to give the data on their school around close contacts. And so if you're a close contact, that meant you were within 6 feet, masked or unmasked, with someone who was positive. If that happens, you are quarantined for 14 days and then monitored to see if you would develop COVID-19. And what happened was they were able to say that there were 3,425, I think, Rupaka, I'm looking at you to see if I'm close. And out of that, they had 40 whether it was staff or students, test positive. Out of the 40, 12, they said, were either in athletics or in schools without masks. So that ends up to be a 0.6% transmission rate, which is so much lower, which really started giving us some confidence, and that was early on, about that masks are working. One of the pieces that we have to increase in our district is that with a hybrid, we are able to social distance, not always, but most of the time at 6 feet. So we have given students more mask breaks or allowed them to take their masks off. As we move to bringing all students back, we are going to be wearing the masks more and we'll have structured mask breaks. So that's a mitigation strategy as we go forward. The piece that's been very difficult for everyone is that the recommendation is always social distancing and masks. And in the school setting, I started calling around to other districts that have brought all students back and asking, if you're unable to provide 6 feet, how much space are you able to give and how is it going with masks? Majority of school districts have said it's gone very well. And so that they weren't able to do the 6 feet social distancing, you do to the extent possible in the space that you have. I think the airplane example is good for us to listen to, that in different settings we have different social distancing that we can provide. But the masks are serving a purpose along with hand washing. When working with Fargo Cass Public Health, I will say they have been very flexible. We meet with them during the week just to talk through things. I give them, here's the layout of Longfellow's lunchroom. This is what we're thinking. Is this the right spacing, or should we space kids out more? They have been extremely helpful in any building that we ask them to give us feedback as we go forward. And I just really appreciate having those thoughtful conversations back and forth. In the cleaning products, we have switched to cleaning product that has less dwell time. Instead of having to sit for a couple minutes, this is a shorter span. At the same time, when we switch products, we have to look at, do our employees need to wear different safety gear to use that kind of product? I have to give a shout out to the paraeducators in Fargo. We have been going 1 hour less per day, and then we're asking paraeducators to help with cleaning of all surfaces so that our custodian staffs can fog with a disinfectant sanitizer that they go through the rooms. And that's another layer of mitigation. As we look at going back to full days, 4 days a week, we still would be working with our paraeducators probably on an extended days to continue that cleaning, which we feel is so important as we go forward. I'm just trying to make sure I've hit all of these. So the masking. The other piece is the mixing of large groups, and that is something that we have not allowed. So whether it's secondary and saying let's call all the seniors down to have a senior meeting, we are not doing that. We are asking our educators to meet by virtual or be in a space where they can spread out further than 6 feet away and wear masks. I think that is one piece that we've talked more about, and we're trying to make sure we're messaging that I don't want to knock Bob out for 14 days because for whatever reason if I had it. So let's use model for our students where we need to go. The hardest thing talking to other districts is quarantine. And so what happens sometimes when someone's a positive case and we're following the safety protocols is that for whatever reason, it can knock out a large amount of students and staff. And so it doesn't always mean people are sick, but they're not able to be at school. When the governor made the change, we thought, oh my goodness, that's going to change everything. Well, it doesn't change as much as we thought. We are seeing a lot of positive cases happening within homes. So if one person has it, the household close contacts, we are seeing that they are spreading. And I think that does make sense. The people that you live with were probably not being masked at home as we're there. So I'll just check one more time to make sure I didn't miss a strategy. The piece at the elementary that might be different is that we are not mixing classes. That's why recess is done by the classroom right now. Lunch is done in the classroom or spread out with less classes in the cafeteria. But we will have to take our masks off to eat. And so what they have been recommended is doing potting. It means within a room, I would probably always eat with the same 6 individuals so that if someone tested positive, we wouldn't have the whole class be a close contact. And so we're trying to mitigate risk, and that would be, the recommendation is groups can switch, but let's wait for a 3 or 4 day break before we'd switch those groups. So we'd be intentionally potting, is the word that's being used, while we eat when we're at school. So I don't know if I missed something for Dr. Gross or Dr. Gandhi.
That was quite thorough. Thank you, Missy. Robin, you had your hand up?
I do, and since we're talking about masks, I have two thoughts. We all want our kids back in school. I mean, everybody does. Let's focus on getting our kids back to school instead of fighting masks. And that's where our community can come together. I know that there are some that are very opposed to masks, but I think the priority is getting our kids back to school. I will also say, and I'm struggling with this in my own job, there are different kinds of masks out there that are coming down from the guidelines from the governor that aren't effective and that won't qualify for the exemption from quarantine. And I think this is the opportunity for us to educate our public on what is appropriate so you're exempt from quarantine and what you're not, because there are many people, parents that have bought gaiters and bandanas that will not work for quarantine. I would also like to know, I don't think schools can guarantee that students are all wearing masks properly, but we're all going to do the best that we can. So can we talk about the efficacy on certain types of masks? Because if we want our kids to be back, we need to go with the knowledge that we have right now.
We just added that to the plan, the updated recommendations from the CDC. So it is, and I'd have to look at what page. Let's see if I can find it here.
It's 9.
9, thank you. I think there's a link here that we can, oh, that's close contact. And so I do think that the CDC provides a very nice outline on that, and this is where they actually go into now the type of masks that we should use and shouldn't use. And so I know that I'll be meeting with the elementary principals tomorrow, and we have to have this conversation. I just had a conversation with a parent who had mentioned they were going to buy some gaiters. I said, I'm going to ask you to not do that. And the question was, what will happen if they come to school with it? And I said, they can certainly wear it, but we will give them a mask till we can work that out with you. So we do have masks on supply that we can provide as we transition for families. And we're all learning and changing as things change.
While we're on this, can I just say too, the masks that have the valve where children can bring out should not be recommended either. It does it protects the child, but they can just breathe out the virus and spread it to others. So no gaiters, no bandanas, and none with those ventilation valves. And it's very important to cover both the nose and the mouth and to have a double layer cloth mask.
And as we're talking about mask wearing, we're talking about for everyone in the building, kids and adults alike. Brian and then Jim.
At my schools in Rosselt and Fairmont, we've just had one case, that one student test positive. A lot of the things you're doing is what we're doing in Rosselt. You had mentioned in the classroom, as far as desks, if you can't separate them 6 feet apart, what we've done is put them in 4, and then have some PVC pipe and make it like a cross, and then hang plastic sheets in between it all to keep the goal is to keep the air droplets from flying and getting into the nose and the eyes of the students. And so we feel that that's gone very well for us as well. Yeah, it's tough, but these kids, I agree, they need to be back in school and so we got to do all of these things to keep these air droplets from contaminated air droplets from getting to other people, to keep the virus from going to hose to hose.
Sorry, can I interrupt? That's not going, plexiglass and that's not going to prevent them from being quarantined, even if they have masks on with plexiglass between them? No, I take that back. Plexiglass will stop the droplets, but that will not limit the quarantine. I've learned that the hard way. I spent a lot of money on plexis and curtains. And so I think that's what we're trying to avoid here is the quarantine piece, because that's really what is affecting our schools and our students and our teachers.
And I should mention, too, that one of our concerns is that one piece that we really value is small group instruction. We like to bring students together that have a like need and give them some focused instruction. And I had to work with Fargo Cass Public Health saying, what can we do? And he did suggest that we provide all teachers with a face shield for when they're in that small group work along with their mask, unless they have glasses that they're wearing to go forward. The nice thing about wearing the mask, though, at the table altogether is it does allow us to mix the kids in that quarantine, as long as we're all masked. But we will provide all elementary teachers with a face shield as we go forward.
So they'd have a face shield, but with a mask on as well, right?
Yes, and to me, that's something we should talk about. I don't know if we're going to police that, you know what I mean, if someone did not, but we are making sure that we can provide the extra PPE for our teachers.
In a recent community presentation with an NDSU professor, Dr. Carson, what he had shared was that beyond masks, the next layer of Swiss cheese, the next mitigation strategy could be providing a face shield. Because while you have receptors on your nose and your throat that the masks help with, you also have an eye receptor that some studies are saying that can transmit the virus. So the face shield will protect for the eye receptor, then your mask will protect against the other two. So it's another layer of mitigation.
Jim?
Rebecca, I rarely like to disagree with the board president, but you said, so the real message is everybody in our schools, the students and staff, have to have masks. I think the real message is everybody in our community that wants kids back in school full-time needs to be wearing a mask. Because we are going to be wearing masks in the building, but if we don't slow down the spread in our community, the likelihood that we can be back to full-time instruction with all of our teaching staff is not high. So our message should be clear. We would like to encourage the entire community, regardless of age, regardless of occupation, to please consider wearing a mask when you're out in public.
And I had not made a motion, and I don't have a motion that I was making, but if I had made one and that would have been an amendment, I would have accepted your amendment. Yes, absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind, I don't think any of us from what we're talking about here tonight has any doubts in our mind that if this is a community project, in order for us to take care of ourselves, the song that was played earlier from the kids at Fargo South here, Bruin Ambassadors, Lean on Me. And we all need to lean on each other. We need to step it up. We need to pick it up. The school district, we are doing our job at trying to help at enforcing the use of masks and other vehicles, and we need everyone to help. We're all part of this. We have to be part of it together. Does anyone have any other comments? Seth? Okay.
Yes, I would like to comment about, I agree, Jim, everybody, it's not just the people in the school, it's everybody, and that's some of the concern that I have. Two things that I'm kind of concerned about, and it's hard to get the community all behind us when our city leadership is not getting on board with the mask mandate, and so I hope that the community can come in and help do this too, but it's sometimes I feel like it's hard for me to be hopeful on that when some of our leaders aren't doing that as well. And I also, as I get emails too, I get concerned about if this is a community effort. A lot of the emails that I've gotten, I don't see a lot of concern for everyone involved, including our teachers and our staff. I see a lot of me in those emails and not a lot of we. And so it's, I guess maybe just as a board, we just need to keep pushing that there's more people involved than just the students. It's the teachers. It's the families at home that are the kids that are living in multi-generational families that have a 95-year-old grandma living at home with them, and you know, 2 parents that have to work that can't quarantine and would never financially make it. There's so many different aspects that a lot of the emails that I'm getting, I'm not seeing that community effort attitude in it, and I just would like to encourage everyone who is thinking about this, and we're all thinking about it, and we all want our kids back, but there's a lot more people at stake than the emails that I'm getting from people, so.
Dr. Gandhi?
Seth, thank you for saying that, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're having this conversation today, right? There's been significant amount of feedback since the summer, pretty much, but especially since the COVID-19 committee meeting started. The meeting started, and we started making decisions, and I think it's important for the board really to give a comprehensive evaluation of 4 things. And I think as I look at all the feedback that's come your way, it really falls into one of 4 buckets. It's either outcomes, the process, power, or perception. So you're going to get feedback on the outcomes. No matter what the committee decides, there will be individuals that are in favor of the outcome, and there will be individuals that aren't. So that just has to be part of the decision. And I think all the decision makers that are part of that COVID-19 committee know that as well. And it was actually shared at the first meeting as well that you are going to be making decisions, and you're going to be having outcomes that will significantly impact people's livelihoods, their schedules, their routines, everything else. And that comes with a lot of difficulties as well. But then another piece that's been questioned has been the process. And I think the board needs to give that some thorough thought as well, is what is the process this board wants to see in terms of how decisions or outcomes are determined. The process that we developed, and we developed it together, and I will say that we developed it together because this board voted on it on July 30th, was that we wanted to bring as many stakeholders to the table as we can. The committee that administration had first presented when we started our Smart Restart plan consisted of 7 individuals. We then presented that plan in a webinar to over 1,000 staff members, and we got feedback to add more staff, which we did. We then presented it to over 1,000 parents, and we got feedback to add more parents, and the committee expanded from 7 to 18. Even to this day, we are getting, rightful or unrightful, that's not for me to decide. I'm going to stick with the process that I've been asked to follow. At the guidance of this board, we've been asked to add mental health experts. We've been asked to ask more parents. There isn't a right or wrong answer. There's always more people that can be at the table. But now we're also being asked to dissolve the committee because members of the committee are getting very unfairly treated by some very passionate individuals in this community. And I think we have to be able to treat each other with respect as well. So I think the board needs to evaluate, is the current process that working or not working? Because I'll tell you that as administrators, we don't have an ego with this. We want to do what's right for our staff. We want to carry out the vision of the school board, and we want to do what's best for our kids. And we want to get there. And we know that we are school administrators, and we do have an area of expertise in how decisions and how they're going to be carried out. We know that we need our teachers at the table to be able to do that. We know that we need our paras to be able to do that, and all of our staff to be able to do that. But at the same point, we know that there's other pressures as well. And then I think the board also needs to evaluate power. I think there's this perception and feedback that you've gotten that the board gave up their power to this committee. I would tell you that the board has always had the ability to make a decision that goes against the committee's decision or to overturn the committee's decision as well. But is that something, if the board wants that power, then the board can have that power. I think my 2 requests would be that if you're an individual that's part of a decision maker for something that has such a significant impact and you're relinquishing that power to the school board, then I would hope you'd stand behind the school board in whatever decision they make. And then my challenge to the school board would be that if that's something the school board decides to take on, because that's not something that they want this committee to do anymore, then I would hope the school board does as much work, if not more work, than this committee has done, because as Tracy alluded to, this committee works very hard to make sure that we're making decisions that are based on data, science, and guidance from our new school, from our local healthcare agencies. And I think the last piece is perception, and we have to take a look at our staff perception as well. What a lot of our staff are telling you, and what a lot of our staff have shared, has been that some of these mitigation strategies are not working effectively, whether it's human behavior, whether it's student behavior, or they're not all working at the highest level, and we have to be able to make modifications as well. But there's also a staff perception of fear, and how do we honor that perception as well? And that perception of fear, it's not unwarranted. It's coming from the county transmission rates. It's coming from the increased numbers in our county. So I understand where our staff is coming from. For me as a superintendent, it's a very delicate balance, because you see numbers rising in your county. The guidance that we're getting from Fargo Cass Public Health, at least at the elementary level, is that the staff is safer in our school buildings, but that's not what they're seeing. And part of being safer in our school buildings means the community is doing their part, but the community is not doing their part when the numbers are raising. So it's a delicate balance, and that's where we are today. I mean, and the situation that we are today is no different than West Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck. I am in constant communication with those superintendents and what's happening in their district as well. So I think it's just important to know that. It's important to recognize the concerns of our staff. It's important to recognize, why would 3 teachers that are at the table say, hey, maybe this committee's not for me? And part of the reason is because they feel like we're making predetermined decisions, and I will own that, because I've had that conversation with them, because I've always led and worked backwards from trying to get kids back in school, and that to me is the end goal. But it's not to discount the needs of our teachers. It's because I'm going to go off of the guidance that I get from Fargo Cass Public Health, or how I am interpreting the information they're sharing with me. That's what I feel like my role is as a superintendent. People have their own perceptions on Fargo Cass, on North Dakota Department of Health, on the governor's, and it's not a political thing for me. But I think these are the pieces of feedback that the board has been given until now, and I think it's important for the board to be able to delineate, these are the 4 things that you really need to evaluate, and whether you want to make a change or continue, because administration will take the guidance that you tell us. And for us, it's not that we're not willing to defend the decisions we make. We absolutely are. We've always felt that the committee process, it's not to be a distractor. It is to be as inclusive as we can, but we know that there's so many different factors, and a lot of the factors are fear of the unknown, and that's what you have when you have a global pandemic. So these are all just pieces that we ask for the board, and the guidance that we ask, where do we go from here?
Jim?
Well, as one board member, Rupak, I will tell you, number one, the board hasn't given any power over to any committee. What we did is we asked for a committee to get created to exercise expertise on behalf of the community. To assume that the 9 of us would have the expertise to know how to open up a high school of 1,300 students and do it in a safe manner is just ludicrous. We have our professional educators on the committee. We have our public health officials on the committee. We have our liaison, who happens, luckily, to be a pediatrician on the committee. So we didn't give up power. We recognize that this decision requires expertise that we can find outside of the board. And you are absolutely right. We could take the decision authority and say, abandon the committee. I, as one board member, wouldn't support that for even a second. It is a perception issue more than anything else. And I would tell you the perception issue is in part because it became a political issue, which it never should have been. It is a public health issue and should be dealt with accordingly. So to those in the community that are thinking, I, as a board member, don't want to have to make this decision, I, as one of the board members, already did make this decision, and that was to get the best people possible in a room, looking at it on a regular basis to figure out the fastest, safest way for us to get back to regular full-time instruction. So I appreciate the fact we've had this conversation for, I don't know how long tonight, an hour, hour and a half. I think in large part because of a couple of community outcries and some staff outcrying. But at the end of the day, I, at least as one board member, 100% support the decisions that this board made and the process that's in place and the decisions being made by the COVID task force. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. And thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Jennifer?
So, Rupak, you covered a wide array of topics, and I was there are many that I have some follow-up questions to, but I think trying to represent some of the hundreds of emails that we've gotten on this topic and asking, why did the board hand this sort of decision-making over to a committee? What they're saying is they elected us to make these sort of, hard decisions and to take the evidence collectively. And they're saying the people that are at the table of this committee, are their voices in being louder than others? Do you know what I'm saying? So if the medical community is saying, and there's research to suggest that the safest place is for students to be in the classroom and staff to be in the classroom, then why are we still not in school? I think they're saying, what voice is louder than the evidence? And to your point about safety for staff, I'm hearing sort of conflicting comments about that, so maybe you could clarify. When we want everyone to feel safe, we want to implement any mitigation strategy that has been part of the recommendation that is known to be successful. So if staff still are saying that they see something different, are the numbers then showing differences in our schools compared to others? Because we have a wide variety within similar communities in terms of plans and who is in school, in-person school, and who isn't in terms of number of days. So when it comes down to confidence, what strategies are we implementing, or is administration implementing to really reassure and to build that confidence within the staff based on the numbers?
Sure. I think for us, Missy gave you today an outline of everything that's been communicated to the board and the updates that we make to our plan to add additional mitigation strategies. We're going to continue communicating to the staff. I can't speak to, we have, just like we have differing board member views, differing administrator views, we have differing staff views as well on what's working, what's not, what's the best way to go about it. I would tell you that if you look at any other of the school districts that you referenced, and it is important to know that we are the first school district in terms of comparison to Moorhead or West Fargo in our area, and we're 2 weeks behind Bismarck, to announce bringing elementary kids back and when we're going to start that. So I think sometimes unfair comparisons are made about other school districts and the decisions they've made, but that's not true, and that's not to criticize any of my peers, because I think every school district is doing what's best for them and their district and the process that they've been governed to do by their board. But I will tell you that the staff concerns, which we know where the staff concerns are coming from, you live in a county where you're seeing numbers rise on a daily basis. Obviously, you're going to have some of those concerns. That is true in Bismarck. That is true in West Fargo. If you followed any of the 2 school board meetings that happened last night, you heard significant amount of voices from their staff members that spoke as well. So it is not unique to Fargo.
I would like to say that I am supportive of us continuing the way we are. I approved the plan partly because of the committee. also saw many other positives throughout the plan. But the fact that there was the foresight to put together the plan, to think that, or to put together the committee, to think that we are going to think through the individuals that we are going to need to have at the table to help us make these decisions, helped give me the confidence, because I don't have the expertise that the individuals have that are on this committee. I believe that it's important to have everyone on the committee that currently is on the committee. I believe that if we did not have that committee, and it was coming to us to make the decisions every 2 weeks, for example, like the committee currently is making, we would need to have a group advising us. I wouldn't be able to take a vote at a board meeting, I don't believe, with just the 9 of us, and even with the wonderful information and the knowledge from administration, I don't believe that that would be enough for me to make a decision in regard to what ought the next instructional model be for 2 weeks down the road. I would need an epidemiologist. I would need someone like our board liaison, Tracy. I would need educators, for example, the 3 that we have involved. I would need parents to help sort through this information, and I would need to be able to look through all of the information here, guidance from state, Cass County, death rate, hospitalization rate, transmission rate, implementing social distancing, staff leave data, so we'd need human resources information there, and substitute fill rate. I would also need help helping to analyze what all of this information really means, so that it can all be put into perspective for me to be able to formulate a decision. I believe that that would greatly slow up our process. So I'm in support of the committee that has been doing its work. I thank the committee. I thank administration. I believe that the board did not give up any authority, is not trying to say, wash our hands of it, and we don't want to be involved in the tough decision-making. I believe tonight is an opportunity for us to be able to have this dialogue, and it's been wonderful for us to be able to share here tonight. It's also an opportunity for for any one of us to say if we want to change course, right? The memo says it's for discussion and possible action. We at any time can take action if we feel like we need to. And we can plan at future board meetings to have an update similar to this on the agenda to, if we feel like we need to kind of force the discussion at some point again, that can come through governance. We can talk about that if we want to put something regular on our agenda, for example. But I believe that we need to, and that we ought to stay the course that we are on. Brian.
When I got the email from the staff saying they wanted to dissolve the committee, I immediately sat down and wrote my thoughts. I don't want to dissolve the Smart Restart Committee. We have a plan that keeps our students and staff safe. We have 5 different levels of learning, wherever we can go with it. They could be in person or virtual learning. It offers great flexibility. I felt it was transparent. It allowed all the many stakeholders to the table. And as a board member, this is why I voted for this particular plan way back in July 30th. The board, I believe, has done what we were supposed to do for the state in our plan, and it was because of Dr. Gandhi and your staff that worked on putting that together. You know, I would be in favor of, if teachers aren't comfortable being on that anymore, I guess I would be more in favor of putting people on the committee who know when our kids and staff should go back to school. Teachers know how to teach, and they do it very well. And they will do so when they're told to, I'm quite sure of that. We just got to have people. I'm not sure we can have people then on a committee if they don't believe in the committee either. That's going to lack confidence. So, Dr. Newman, Dr. Gandhi, thanks for the committee work that you're doing, and that I recognize it, and I think it's important that we continue to do that.
Seth.
I agree with the great work that the committee does, and I think that there is huge value in the committee. But I also feel that there is possibly a middle ground that we can still make the decisions on where we're going to move forward as a board based upon recommendations of that committee. We don't have to dissolve it, but we can use it to make decisions. And I feel like that's a middle ground between completely dissolving it and staying the course.
My comment on that would be that you're right, we could change, it would be the change of course of action. So if we're not disbanding that committee, we are saying that we are, in essence, supporting the decisions of that committee. So we're supporting the work of that committee unless we're changing the course of action. Robin?
I would say we need to stay the course. We approve this as a board. Regardless if there's an action that comes out of this, I thank all the committee members, but I also really thank you, President Knudsen, for agreeing to have this on our agenda because our community deserves to hear this conversation. And I think that is part of the perception piece that is so important right here. Our community deserves to know what the process is, how we arrived at it, and how we're going to move forward. So thank you for that. I don't support changing the current process of the committee either.
So I know Jennifer has a comment there, or a question, and there seems to be at least a group consensus at this point that we're staying the course. Just this is based on the feedback and the voices that I have heard here this evening. Jennifer.
Thank you. I actually I agree with Seth, and I think that that would be certainly a reasonable recommendation or middle ground in terms of, if I understood you correctly, not to dissolve the committee, but then so the experts are doing the work and the voices, and every stakeholder is represented, but then it comes to us as a recommendation. So for us to have to weigh in. Yes, I agree with him.
So part of what would need to happen then, this committee meets, the instructional plan committee meets every 2 weeks at 6 a.m.?
6:30.
6:30 in the morning. So this committee is also, the individuals that serve on this committee, it's a Zoom meeting at 6:30 in the morning, every other Monday. The individuals that are on this committee are committed to attending these meetings on a regular basis. There are some alternates assigned if need be. The committee makes that decision in a quick manner, not in a too quick manner, but I'm saying they arrive on the scene with research that they have done, and they are ready and able and to digest the information that is being delivered, so that at the end of that meeting, a decision is made in terms of a recommendation for how our kids are going to school for 2 weeks following that. And then an announcement is made that day to the media, to the parents, to us. If the board gets involved in that, we have to be ready to meet immediately at that time. We have to have every 2 weeks, we have to meet in the morning, right after that committee, and we're either approving what that committee has recommended, or we're not, and if we're not, then what are we doing? So I mean, I hear what you're saying, Seth and Jennifer. I feel like our opportunity, because we can, again, this can come on an agenda at a future time. We have an opportunity if we need to, if we really, really feel we need to change the course of action by putting it on an agenda at another time. And that's another opportunity for us to check in and decide if we need to change the course of action. But I think that there would be a lot of questions in our community if we added we'd be a second layer onto that committee. Dr. Gandhi.
Yeah, and I think, Rebecca, I wouldn't get too hung up on the logistics. I think if We could also ask the committee to rechange their time frame and align it with school board meetings if we wanted to do. Ultimately, I think just from my own experience and learning, I think my question to, if this is the direction the board moved to, my question would be why? So what is the deciding factor to lead to another layer and make this an advisory committee?
And I'll call on you in a sec, Dave, but I understand that times can change in terms of meeting times and everything, but there has been immediate communication that has taken place in our community as a result of the decisions being made by this committee. And while change is constant, we don't need to create even more questions and more opportunities for staff and parents and kids to not know. So what I mean is, where would we be holding up that process? David.
Dr. Gandhi answered half of my question when he said, it seemed like it'd be relatively simple. The committees could simply meet the Monday before our board meetings. We could meet in that evening. I don't know why there has to be an announcement made about something that's going to happen in 2 weeks immediately. The second, the why, we'd be treating, I support what Seth is saying. We'd be treating this just as we do all of our other committees. We have board committees. Those board committees make recommendations. The board makes the decision. I don't think there's any problem with that at all.
Nikki and Jim.
I guess my only concern is us slowing down that process and that communication time frame. I'm just concerned that if they meet, and we need to respect the work that they do, although I understand what's being shared here, I'm just concerned about slowing it down, getting the announcements out and getting it to people who need to have that information. Could we talk about that a little bit? You've kind of addressed it, but even if we stall off a day, that's one more day we're behind.
Jim?
I don't have any problem with the theory of a day, an hour, even 2 days, but I have a real problem with the whole concept. To say that this board takes committee recommendations that come to it and acts on them judiciously at the time they're presented would be a misstatement at best. Sometimes we get a recommendation and we chew on it for months at a time. This is a whole different kind of committee. So my question is this: if they make a recommendation that elementary students are going to go back to school 4 days a week, 2 weeks from now, and we as a board collectively, the majority of us, decide, nope, we don't like that, then I would assume that we stay with whatever they were doing before they made that recommendation. If instead what's going to happen is then we're going to dream up our own recommendation as a board, then there's no point to having the committee. So I just do not understand the process. We have the right to override the committee at any board meeting. We have that much authority. For us to somehow say, okay, you're going to recommend it and then we're going to endorse it, either we better rubber stamp endorse it and then that's all it was, or we better really think about, okay, what are we going to do when some of us on the board don't like the committee's recommendation? What is the process then? And from my perspective, I think it's a melee. I also think you then are inviting the 150 people a week that email us on this topic to come to that board meeting where we're going to hear the recommendation and make the decision and share their thoughts, which are good thoughts for sure, but that's going to convolute the decision process as well. So it's a very slippery slope you're talking about when you take it from a committee that makes a decision that we authorized them to turning it into a recommendation that we'll consider. It's my 2 cents.
Jennifer?
So I have a couple of clarifying questions. How does the clearly not 100% of the committee members agree. Are you using an 80% consensus? Or how are you coming to the recommendations that you have so far? And that's kind of what I meant by, well, I'll let you answer that question first.
Majority vote.
So the majority of is there an even then distribution of voices in terms of medical versus community or parent, or are sometimes the votes line, are they always taking the data-driven approach within that vote? I mean, I haven't been part of the committees, so maybe that's something that, Tracy, if you wouldn't mind, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
No, that's okay. All of these are now recorded in public, so anyone is welcome to go back and watch them. I can't answer for how other people are voting, but I would say it has generally been a high majority, if not unanimous, on most of our decisions. I don't want to quote exactly, but I can't think of a single time where it was split by one vote or something. Does that sound right, Rupak? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think one of our recent votes on elementary, I believe, was 11-7, if I remember correctly. And
That's probably the widest gap we've had. It has pretty much been a big majority.
And so if I may continue, based on the data that you've shared in terms of, also we talked a lot about the younger elementary age kiddos, but so is, from a medical expert viewpoint, what about middle school and high school? Is the recommendation still to stay out, 100% or virtually, or what sort of has that conversation sounded like?
I don't know that we've breached it yet. I look forward to it coming in the future, hopefully. I do know there's not consensus in the medical literature about this. I wish there was. I spoke earlier that there is new studies coming out, particularly looking at 12 to 14-year-olds in the middle school range. So I'm happy to delve into that data and bring it as I'm able. But I don't know that I think part of it too, I mean, I speak for the medical side, but from the administration side, I don't mean to overstep, but the logistics of that are so much more complicated. The fact that middle school and high school students have 6 or 7 periods a day and they're changing locations and exposing that many more people in different classrooms is difficult to manage, I think.
So when the CDC information that you shared talked about, perhaps the safest place for both staff and students is in school, was that specific to elementary, or was it inclusive of middle school, high school?
The data I'm aware of is the strongest for children 10 and under.
Thank you.
Robin?
I am going to have to part quickly, but I would say this is a very complex conversation. Which data do you use? I trust the people on that committee's judgment, their judgment as to which data to use. If it was 100% data-driven, there would be no humans needed on a committee. There is always a human factor and a professional factor within what we do on a committee or what we do on a board. So I appreciate data. I appreciate it all of the time, but I don't only rely on data because there are so many mixed messages out there right now. So the people that are on that committee are doing that research to use what I think is the most real data. And it seems to me like the CDC is the guideline that we should use. We all want somebody to tell us what to do. I thought, too, it would be a great thing when the governor changed the guidance for masking and isolation and quarantine. It's much more complicated than I expected. But again, I respect the immense amount of time that this committee has done. I, again, won't favor disbanding it. That would be disrespecting the people that are on that committee and their time. And if we disband it, why would we ever have any community feedback again on a committee? I really want to respect that process. And again, Tracy, I thoroughly appreciate your expertise on that board and the voice, or that committee and the voice on this board. You're doing a tremendous job balancing the two.
All right, we have had discussion for, I'm not quite sure how long, and it doesn't really matter because it's been good and thorough, and everyone's been engaged, and I really appreciate that. And so there's no motion on the table, and there doesn't need to be for us to move on to our next item, which will be to have some reports. I gain the sense that at least a majority of us are in support of us continuing along the path that we are. And if there does need to be further looking into this or further evaluation, we certainly can do that at some point. If any one of you feel the need or desire that this ought to be on an agenda down the road, let me know, and that will be discussed at governance. We will go from here. Does anyone else have any comment at the end here before we move to board reports? Dr. Gandhi.
Nothing. I think the only thing I'm going to wrap it up with is I think, like I've said before, these are extremely complex decisions that have significant impacts on our families, on our families and our staff. So I appreciate the advocacy, and I will 100% appreciate the engagement and do my best to respond even to anything that's personally sent to me to the best level I can. However, just because of recent interactions, I am going to let the board know, and I will probably share this with the instructional plan committee as well, and this speaks to some of the sentiments from some of the staff that called to dissolve the committee. I have instructed all of our district office staff, I will continue to do that, and probably tell all committee members as well that they do not need to engage in conversations that are unprofessional or demeaning. We do have, unfortunately, a lot of individuals that have just called to swear someone out and swore tons of words that are just insulting and just not professional or constructive in any form of criticism, and that's just something as a school district that we cannot and will not tolerate. So to the members of the committee that have experienced that, I apologize, but I think I will ask them not to engage, and same to our staff members as well. So if board members get feedback on a disengagement, that may be some of it, but I just wanted to make that very clear as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Let's move on to board reports. Robin, I know you have to take off. If you would just share a few minutes with us, thank you.
Thank you for letting me go first. Governance Committee was on September 24th. On September 24th, I also visited Davies in my liaison school. Troy Cody introduced the visit. Dale Miller gave me a great tour throughout the facility. I was invited by Darcy Brandenburg to tour the band room. I also asked to see how lunch would work. That was the day that administration set up the lunchroom in the socially distanced area. It looked kind of militaristic, but I will tell you this, Sean Safransky was monitoring lunch. Troy and his team have worked incredibly hard to make sure that nobody would have to isolate or quarantine because of 6-foot distance. That school is in a shambles, but it looks great. It's very functional. He was very proud of that. But then I will say about a week later is when the governor then had the new, sorry, my glasses are broken, had the new guideline that they wouldn't have to socially distance. So that's how quickly these things turn. I felt really bad for him. 10-2, I visited, or I was on the North Dakota Return to Learning team, and that was all about the governor's new guidance about the quarantining and the masks. On the 12th of October, there was the work session, which was Monday. Today, I also participated in, witnessed the webinar from North Dakota Return to Learn, and that's what Missy Sagnas was on, and I can say not enough good things about her, but it was really focusing on the mental health and keeping what happens when we keep our kids out of school. One of the resources are abundant on the state website, and I want to bring attention to everybody that's listening here. ParentsLead.org has tremendous toolkits, age-specific resources, parenting during a pandemic, please check that out. They've put a lot of work into it, and as I said, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Pam Sagnas. Let's see here. Also today, and I sent a link to, as your governmental affairs chair, the chamber had candidate forums today for District 44 at 1 o'clock. And then tomorrow there will be one for District 46 at 1 o'clock as well. Those are live links. I encourage you to listen in. Those are the two districts that are up for in the general election that affect our school district directly. And one of the things that I continue to hear from our legislators about the legacy fund, there does not seem to be an appetite to spend on recurring costs. A lot of the conversation will be around one-time expenses, so let's keep that in mind as we proceed. And then closing that out, Government Affairs Committee meets this Friday at 7:30 a.m. And I would like to acknowledge Jolyn Mathern because she has Negotiations Committee this week and Planning Committee and Government Affairs. So she's going to have a busy, busy week. So be sure to reach out to her and thank her as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Seth, how about if you go next?
On the 29th, I met with Megan Kaiser at Lincoln Elementary and also surprised my baby sister who works there as a special ed teacher. She didn't know I was coming. And Megan showed me around Lincoln because that's actually the first time I'd been to Lincoln. The next day on the 30th, I met with Brad at Carl Ben Eielson, and it was actually quite helpful. We talked a little bit about boundary changes, and that was actually the day prior that some planning committee homework was actually due, so it was good to have a conversation with him about some of those boundary changes that will affect Carl Ben Eielson. And then that same day on the 30th, I also met with Jennifer, principal at Ed Clapp. And all those visits went really well. Obviously, COVID-19 and the situation that we're in was obviously, the top thing that we were kind of discussing because it's kind of on everybody's everybody's mind, and it was my first visits there to those schools. They were pretty much all three principals were in, agreement that the students are, doing great and are doing a good job at adapting because kids and they adapt well, and that the teachers are doing really good work. They seem to be favoring the hybrid model and enjoy kind of the smaller class sizes. One thing interesting though that I didn't expect them to talk about was the change in schools being open really early, and that was one thing that they almost kind of would like to see remain after we're back to a new normal. It was pretty much a consensus that things are quieter. There's less incidences in the morning. Everybody seems to kind of start off on the right foot when there's not the chaos in the morning that can happen by having the school open super early. So that was not something I really expected as from feedback from them on that subject. And then the 25th, planning committee meeting discussing boundaries. On the 5th, I did the new member seminar, and I would say one of the most valuable things I learned from that was our funding and how it comes from, and explanation of mills and things like that, because that's kind of new to me as a new board member. So I'm glad I got to learn from that. And then on the 7th, at a CEA meeting that obviously we discussed Woodrow Wilson, which we won't be discussing any further. I'm excited to see what we're going to do on that committee now. On the 12th, I obviously attended the work session, and then this morning, another planning committee meeting with some more homework. So looking forward to that too. So thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Nikki.
Thank you, Rebecca. got a few things, not a ton here, but as far as the committee goes, nothing real additional to add other than what I shared tonight. However, I'm glad you're excited because we have plenty more to do. October 2nd, I attended the DPI ESSA Task Force meeting. I reached out to my liaison schools, Ben Franklin, had a marvelous conversation with Shane Martin on October 6th, right away in the morning. He was absolutely fabulous. And I'll be meeting with Washington, Kathy Selberg, next week. Participated in virtual parent-teacher conferences for Davies and got a survey on that today, and I thought it went really well. I enjoyed it. Of course, we're newbies at Davies, so. And then today, of course, attended the North Dakota School Board Association new member training. A couple of notes just to make. Thank you to everybody who continues to reach out. We have many, many emails on several of these pressing topics, and I apologize for overlooking before, and Robin alluded to as well, that many, many gracious thanks to Tamara Uselman for her work expanding AP 3260, because she did put in an incredible amount of time on it, and I was so nervous about it, I overlooked that, so I am sorry. I think I have one request this week, because in hearing, and I've heard it outside of this meeting, that our teachers are bearing the brunt a bit from parents who are upset, and that breaks my heart. We are living in a time where we need to give each other some grace, and I just really want people to think about the things they're saying and their emotions and their actions, because our kids are watching us. They're watching all of us. And they're watching to see how we're handling this. If we handle this as very best we can, none of us love this. There is not a person around us that loves this. But if we handle this the very best we can model that for them. If we can't gain a little better control of ourselves, and if we're frustrated and we're angry and we're not giving people a little bit of grace because nobody has the answers, our kids will do that too. Our kids will do what we do. So I guess if I had a message or a plea this week, please, 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 don't take it out on the teachers. That just breaks my heart. I love and respect our teachers, and everybody has their own reasons for doing what they're doing right now, and we need to respect that, and we don't know what all those reasons are. Even with those of us up here, we all have different opinions on it because we all have different backgrounds, we all have different family members. We need to be graceful and kind and understanding right now. It's okay to be upset. Please don't be mean. And please think about how you're sharing that with the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Jim?
Excuse me, like many of you, I was at the retreat yesterday. We've had 2 planning committees since the last board meeting. And just a heads up to those on the planning committee, I know at today's we thought the next one would probably be the 30th. My guess is we're going to probably try to schedule a planning Zoom meeting before the next board meeting. But something will come out probably tomorrow from Jolene just to see availability. We had a Western Region Leadership question and answer session with our national board members. Governance committee I attended. I think I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to spend a couple hours over at Woodrow Wilson, and I think that was it since our last meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Brian?
We have a GAC meeting on Friday, October 16th. Looking forward to that. That's our second meeting. Tomorrow, get the opportunity to be on negotiations committee with Mr. Paulson, and his shoebox is full of money that he has laying around here somewhere. He's going to show us. Had the opportunity to attend 2 planning sessions with Jim on October 2nd and October 13th today, and the board's retreat that we had yesterday. And thanks, Jim, for that board governance model explanation of what it is. That's a new one in all of my years that I was in small schools and things. We never used that model ever. And so this is new to me, and I absolutely love it. It's a good model to have, and it's just a lot of teams that we're on, and at the end of the day, we're all on the same team trying to get the work done to educate students. And so I appreciated your explanations yesterday.
The donuts were also good. Jennifer.
Okay, so my liaison is Fargo Youth Initiative, and we have been playing a very great game, a lengthy game of back and forth. And so, although we have each other's contact information, we have not yet connected. So, so far our schedules have not aligned, but we will keep trying. I did attend 2 planning meetings as well as the CAE and the work session. And so really you've gotten the share outs from the committees already, chairs. So I have really no more comments to add to that. Thanks.
David.
Well, once again, I must apologize to the board for my tardiness. Tomorrow morning's negotiation meeting will be the 3rd meeting this week up at the district office. So I just left and put her on autopilot, and then I was mystified when I got into the parking lot, and there ain't nobody there. So, here, I finally got here. Would be embarrassing enough, but that's at least the 2nd time I've done that. On the 24th, we had a governance meeting. On the 25th, we had a planning meeting. We had the board work session on Monday, which was extremely enlightening to me. We had another planning meeting, and now we're going to have another one, and we're talking about boundary changes, so I'm so excited I can hardly get to sleep. Anybody who's out there, school board elections will be June of 2022, and you really should get in on this fund, so I would jump on right now. And then, as Brian alluded, we have a negotiations committee meeting tomorrow. And that's it.
Thank you, David. Tracy.
Thanks. David, one of my sons is a hockey player, and I am notorious for bringing him fully dressed in pads and ice skates to the wrong rink and walking in that way. So please don't feel bad. On September 29th, I did my liaison visit here at South High. I spent about 2 hours in the building and really had a good time. I learned, in fact, about the program presented here today, the Bruin Ambassadors, as well as many other positive things they're doing here. The Fix It Forward program, I think, was recently highlighted by our district as well. Just echo what people said, that the students are doing a really good job of following what we're asking them to do, and everyone seemed happy and learning during my time there. Later that day, I took part in a Zoom meeting with Dr. Deborah Waldron, who's on this AAP National Task Force for Safe School Reentry. Also on that meeting was Dr. Kathy Anderson, who's the North Dakota AAP chapter president, and Dr. Joan Connell, who's the field medical officer for our state. And it was just very enlightening to hear what they're recommending at a national and a state, and then a more local level. At that meeting is when I was appointed to serve as the representative for the North Dakota on that Council of School Health. So hopefully more to come from that. On October 5th, we had our COVID-19 Instructional Plan Committee meeting. October 7th, CEA Committee meeting. October 8th, I took part in an AAP town hall called Ask the Experts, all about return to school and sports, and what the national pediatricians are advising on that. October 12th, yesterday, our school board work session. Today, from 9 to 1, I took part of a North Dakota State Board Association new member seminar. I too learned a lot about funding. And then I did call in for the planning committee meeting as well. This Thursday of this week, I have my own 2 elementary children's teacher conferences virtually, so I'm looking forward to those. And then, as been said, Friday we have GAC, and I also have the Fargo CAS Board of Health meeting.
Great, thank you, everyone. The President's report is at your desk. Just wanted to mention Native American Commission met October 1st, and that yesterday it was Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm not quite sure yet if the programming has been recorded and will be available for us to view or not. Of course, it was held during the same time as we had our work session, but wanted to point out, I found this on the Fargo Public Schools Facebook page. Tamara Uselman, our Director of Equity and Inclusion, gave a short write-up acknowledging Indigenous Peoples Day, and there's a link on that Facebook post to some more information if we're interested. At any rate, last night I watched this film that she had recommended, and it's called Basketball, Water, and the Lost City of Elbow Woods. Elbow Woods, and I was not familiar with the name of this town, even though I'm from North Dakota, but Elbow Woods is a town over in the western part of North Dakota that is now covered by what is Lake Sakakawea as a result of Garrison Dam being constructed in 1953. And the reason that it talks about basketball is that the town or the basketball team of Elbow Woods had, I think they took second place in a tournament way back then. And I'm not going to, I won't tell you how the film ends, right? But I would suggest watch the film. It's entertaining, and it is it's a way for us to learn about Native Americans being displaced in our own state. Because the town, Newtown, is the new town that was developed as a result of the dam being constructed and Lake Sakakawea covering the town of Elbow Woods. So that was very informative to me, and it's just an interesting way to see how they wove that story in to what happened factually. I emailed to you all an update to the Core Neighborhoods Master Plan. That's just a draft of the plan that the consultants hired by the city is working on putting together. And there's a meeting that is next, let's see, it's the week of the 16th of November. There will be another meeting of that steering committee. And I think I also included information to you on a virtual community open house that was available to our community, and I think it's still open. So if you want to click on that and learn more about the master plan, and there might even be an opportunity for you to still provide feedback, you could do that. Thanks to everyone that was at the work session yesterday. We were all there. Thank you, Jim, and administration. Governance is next Tuesday at 7:30 in the morning. I tuned in to the instructional plan committee Monday, and it's good to know that those are there for us to either we can go back and review or listen to them as they come on board. And just want to make sure, and I don't think this will be an issue tonight because it's about 9 o'clock. We all might be interested in taking off and leaving, but let's make sure that or work to make sure that after our committee meetings, before or after our committee meetings, before or after our board meetings, when we're taking breaks, when there is that kind of urge to talk to our fellow board member about something, that it doesn't appear as if we're talking about anything that would be business related. And so just encourage us to, disband and get on with our lives, get on to the next thing, so that there's no perception, no thought that we might be doing our work outside of the boardroom. And that is all I have for the evening, except for that our next meeting is the 27th. Thank you.